Let's cover the Godzilla Masterclass. Welcome, everyone. So we're going to break down this short sequence and go from just an idea to finished film and show you all the visual effects and Unreal processes along the way. And overall, what I'm going to cover in here are the 3 secrets to make your own films without Hollywood budgets using Unreal 5, and how Unreal really gives us a lot more power as filmmakers, as people on our own, as indie productions and small teams, and really punch above our weight. Make stuff that looks as good as your favorite movies and as good as Hollywood visual effects. And why I love Unreal and why I've gone all in over the last 2 years is because it really is what I find to be a no-cost film school. And what I mean by that is you can make any scene you want, any type of movie, any project, from sci-fi to fantasy to other planets to Arctic tundras to whatever you want, and you can bring it to life yourself using Unreal. And we can do it in real time. So just like on a movie set, you can be the director, you can be the cinematographer, you can be the fight choreographer, everything when you're using Unreal. It's all your movie. So you can make really stylized projects like The Voice in the Hollow, which was put together by Miguel Ortega. I've also made some projects in Unreal, some samurai sword fights for the band Tesseract. And there's also a really good short, if you haven't seen already, I would recommend you watch. It's called Irradiation by Sava Zivkovic. It really shows how you can make some awesome films in Unreal using the same techniques I'm going to teach you here today. And it's also used on Love, Death, and Robots, if you've ever seen that, which is a really awesome Netflix show. It was in season 2, episode 6. So big visual effects studios are using Unreal in real productions to make animated films. And how I first got into Unreal was actually in the virtual production side of things. I think it was made famous by The Mandalorian, using that and the giant LED walls that have been created, and all the new projects that are being shot in real time using the power of Unreal Engine, but doing it on a film set instead of using the same exact tools, the same exact lessons, ideas, and concepts, and just applying them yourself on your home computer. So, and the big reason here is that before, the old school way of working is you have to wait for your renders after you model, after you animate, after you light, after you texture and composite. All these things you're waiting around for the pixelated screen of death. For those of you that use other 3D softwares out there, Maya or Blender, we don't have to wait through any of that. So I want to show what we're going to be making here today. I'm going to give a sneak preview of where the sequence is at so far. And by the way, I'm sharing all the lessons I am learning by making this Godzilla sequence in real time. So I've been making it for the last 2 weeks here and sharing these in this masterclass week after week to show you what we've been up to, what we've learned over the last week, and hopefully you'll get some cool tips that you'll take out of this that you can directly apply inside of Unreal. So let's show this. I'll hide myself here, and let's take a look at where the film is at so far. So that is the Godzilla project that we're gonna break down today. Super excited, lots of new shots that have come up over the last week. And yeah, we're gonna really break this down, show you all the layers that are going into these complex shots, because even though this might look complex, there's some really simple things going into this, and I equate learning visual effects in filmmaking to learning music. A lot of times in music, to play a great song, you just need to learn 4 chords, and that's essentially what we're doing here in Unreal. We're playing 4 different chords, and we're trying to play them as best as we possibly can. But you know, we don't need to learn 80 different tricks to pull this together. It's really focusing in on a couple fundamental techniques here that I want to go over, and I'll share with you in terms of how we built the sets, how we built the explosions, how we added the sparks and the effects and the rain, and down to the animation with Godzilla himself. So does that sound fun? That's what we got on deck for tonight. Super excited to dive into it. Hope you guys are too, but buckle up. And if you haven't, said this a little bit earlier, but I would absolutely recommend, if you want to take this seriously, if you want to implement this and you're looking to become a better filmmaker or visual effects artist, my one recommendation is just get out a pen and paper. I always have a notebook at my side so I can write this down. Whatever you write gets retained, and I'm going to go pretty quick here because I just want to touch on a bunch of different subjects. I want to try to over-deliver as best as I can. And yeah, so I want to make sure that you get as much out of this as you possibly can. And that means not just hanging out for an hour and, hey, I learned something. It's by writing down what you can apply after this and then implementing it in the days and weeks after this. And then, we'll make it worth your while. So without further ado, what are we going to cover tonight? So the bottom line is, with Unreal 5, anyone can start making these types of films in Unreal. Anyone can actually start working in Hollywood, and my goal here is literally to help you do the same thing. And if you don't know who I am, some of you I know are coming through Facebook and things like that. If you don't know who I am before, my name's Josh Tunin. I've spent the last 8 or 9 years working on Hollywood visual effects as a visual effects artist and supervisor, traditionally on shows like Star Wars, Godzilla vs. Kong, Alien Covenant, and movies like that, Deadpool 2. And more recently, it's been on set in virtual productions. I worked on Avatar: The Last Airbender as an Unreal operator and got to figure out what it takes to use Unreal on set, what is the skill set you need, how fast you need to be, and also what are all the techniques that transfer from a high-octane, high-pressure situation like being on set, and using that to make your own films much faster at home. So yeah, and also I had the chance to work on a couple Star Trek productions over with the team at Pixamundo, built some environments for virtual production. So the bottom line is I'm just trying to do a little bit of everything and have tried out one of each project with motion capture actors, with virtual production, with environments. Basically one of everything, just to make sure that you're actually getting the best advice, and all this stuff is what's used today at a visual effects studio, not just one random person's opinion on the internet, because there's lots of those on YouTube, obviously. So yeah, I just want to make sure that that's where we're coming from, because a lot of people have some false impressions with Unreal and working on set, and a lot of people, they're outside the industry looking in, like, how the hell do you get started? There seems to be no set roadmap or any path that you can take, and I definitely felt the same exact way when I was starting out. Most people think you need to already live in New York or LA, you need to have industry connections when you're starting out, and you need a college degree to even get started. And I'm pretty sure every one of these is completely untrue. And a cool story, bringing it back to Godzilla, is actually the director of Godzilla 2014, Gareth Edwards, who also was the director of Rogue One, and most recently he just directed The Creator, which I believe came out either this year or last year. So yeah, he's an awesome director, but he got started out just like you and me as a self-taught visual effects artist and filmmaker. And he used that to direct his own films, got some work with the BBC, made his own film Monsters in around 2010, if I'm getting my years correct there, and then was able to use that to get the attention of other people and get the rights to Godzilla and get attached to that film. So I found this really cool clip too. He started out literally, it might seem crazy, but just like us here on the internet trying to learn and try to do all of this ourselves, he started doing the same exact thing. I was pulling some clips as I was putting this whole class together. I found this old video from an After Effects course that actually I took back in the day, back in like 2000, yeah, around 2010, when I was still trying to figure out how do I get my first experience in visual effects. I came across his course before he was the director of Godzilla. So when I found out he was directing the film, I lost my shit. I came opening night. It was super, super cool to see that happen. But I'll share this quick video with you. It's pretty cool of him back in the day, just getting started like us here and trying to become a better filmmaker.
Hello, my name is Gareth Edwards, and I'm a director and visual effects artist. I recently created a film for the BBC called Attila the Hun, which featured 260 visual effects shots in high definition that I created all from my bedroom on my own. And in this course I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. Basically you'll get a chance to have an overview of my approach to create visual effects shots that you're probably more likely to see in a feature film, but instead done very quickly, very cheaply on a TV budget.
Yeah, so I hope that gets you
my
pretty
name's
excited. That gets me amped up because back in the day, I was off on my own. I was in a town of 10,000 trying to figure out how do you actually get started in the industry. And it always seemed like, man, I just need to know how one person made it in. And I can just follow the steps they took. And Gareth Edwards was definitely one of those people for me. And I really did think this. I always was looking at these behind the scenes of different movies, of different directors, and I would always just think, if they can do it, why can't I? Like, what's stopping me? There seems to be no difference. If you can just start out by making films on your own and parlay that into working in the industry, it seemed like that was the way to do it. So I grew up in a small town, no connections, didn't know anyone, no family friends, nothing crazy, completely self-taught on YouTube. And the biggest lesson I learned early on, and the one thing I want to pass off for any of you looking to break into visual effects or filmmaking, is that, first, I do believe that the next generation of filmmakers is coming from the self-taught generation. It's the people who can learn whatever tool they need, use it in their own productions, use it fast, fast, nimble, small teams. Not these gigantic, $80 million budgets, but these people who can make $1 million budget stretch and look like it's a much bigger film than it really is. That, I truly believe, is the next hallmark of what we're going to see in the independent market. And for all of us here, we're filmmakers. We're trying to figure out how to do this ourselves. That's my personal bet. That's where I really think all of this is going. Was able to start off doing ad work and eventually work at visual effects studios like Framestore, MPC, ILM, yada, yada, yada. Enough about me. This is about you. And we want to focus on transferring all of these lessons that I learned from some of these big shows and these big pictures like Godzilla versus Kong. That was my first experience as a lead compositor over at MPC. And I learned a lot on that show. And I want to share some of those big lessons that I learned along the way, how to make neon-looking environments and how we can make some of these giant monster battles look super believable. And I hope I made all these mistakes so you don't have to. And again, that big mistake, the one thing to take away before we jump into how I actually made this is you do not need a degree. The one thing you need to get started in the visual effects industry is a demo reel. And if I would write that down even if you know it. If you have not gotten a job in the industry, the only thing that matters and the only thing you should be putting your attention towards at first is building a demo reel that puts your work ahead of everyone else and making that demo reel look as great as possible. So that's where I'm going to try to focus in today. What are those things that we can sprinkle into your demo reel, improve your shots, improve your films so that we have a good chance going into visual effects studios, and some cool student work just to share here from the last Masterclass. I hosted the Dune Masterclass last month. We had some students go through that and apply all these techniques, and they were able to build this demo reel piece for their portfolio. This was made in Unreal using all the same tricks that I've been teaching here in these live classes. So there's nothing holding you back. I'm trying to give all the best tactics and ideas and strategies, everything I got, trying to give them away here. So this is the type of stuff that we can be making, and I would encourage you all to try to literally write down the stuff that you can apply to the projects you're working on right now. So it would be great to know as a baseline, I swear the next thing we're going to jump into how we made this, how we got Godzilla, how we animated, how we did everything. But how many projects have you guys made inside of Unreal? It's going to help me get a baseline so I know where to focus my attention for the rest of all the training here. But we'll see if you can let me know what are those projects that you've been working on, and how many has there been, basically? Is it like in the 0 to 1 or 2? Totally cool if that's how many it is. Is it 10? Are some of you really experienced? Or some of you just starting out? Because I can definitely kind of tailor how we'll focus on everything here. David Wilkis started with Unreal last night. That's cool. JMI, we got 2. Nothing so far. This is my first look. Cool, so it sounds like a lot of people just starting out, seeing also Noble Gladiator. You got some experience with other 3D softwares, just not with Unreal, so that's totally cool. We're seeing 0, lots of people just starting out. Well, honestly, that's super exciting to hear because you're in the right spot. So we'll really focus, I think then, based on that, I want to make sure we're making this the most valuable for you guys. So I think we'll focus on the filmmaking side and just try to lay out the entire roadmap, how you can actually approach filmmaking as an independent artist, as a one-man band, or maybe you have 3 or 4 friends or people on Discord or other people you can connect with. I think that's what we'll focus on here and say, how can we try to get the most out of our first projects and hopefully give you some tips for learning Unreal starting out. Well, that's cool. That's great to hear. Also, revisiting Unreal after 10 years. That's 10 years of false starts. That is so true. Angry Man 540. That's hilarious. Well, yeah, the bottom line here is anyone can create Hollywood-level visual effects in films. You do not need to know how to code, how to model, or how to animate. You just need to learn a couple tricks in the right order. And I truly believe it. Anyone can make films. You don't need these $1 million budgets. You just need Unreal 5, and you can make any idea you have come to life. And that's why I've been going all in on Unreal, and I'm super excited to share it with you. So without further ado, let's break down the chapters, and we'll jump right into this. So how to make your own films without Hollywood budgets using Unreal 5. We'll go from idea to final film. This is the perfect filmmaking workflow, how we can go from pre-viz to finished film, even if you're not an animator. This is going to be super cool. We'll teach you some techniques that I personally learned from some of the folks at Pixar. Now you can apply it because they've done a lot of trial and error, lots of error, and those are the people we want to learn from the most. And then after that, we'll talk about the shortcuts to build cinematic environments faster and easier than ever before using some really cool tricks inside of Unreal. Super excited about that one. Just added in a new trick today. And then also the last chapter of our 3. This is the step that 90% of visual effects artists skip over, and that's how we can upgrade our renders and give them that Hollywood level visual effects look. It's not in Unreal. It's through this last step in the process, and we'll go over it. Super excited. This is actually a shot new from this week, and we'll break this down. We'll show you how we went from this raw Unreal render, made that in just a single day, and then we were able to render out all these different layers, assemble them together really easily, really simply, without doing anything complicated, and really bring this shot to life, add in the helicopter lights, the police lights, and combine a couple different layers together to really start to bring them to life, combine it with stock footage, all this cool stuff. And yeah, want to show you this exact process because this is basically the step-by-step workflow I'm applying to this entire sequence. We'll break it down for this one shot. You'll understand the building blocks so that we can apply it to entire films instead of just one shot. Because ultimately, that's the challenge here today, is how do we go from making still images in CGI to making films, to making sequences, to making movies. And ultimately, I always feel like you can't make a film without characters. This is the step everyone skips over. A lot of times you'll see some awesome work inside of Unreal, and they're really impressive environments, but they are not movies. They're not films. There's no characters, and we need characters if we want to tell a story and we want to make a movie. So we got to start with Godzilla. He's our main character, but we're also going to talk about the crowds and the vehicles, the helicopters, the tanks, all that stuff like that. But let's start with Godzilla. And the way I sourced this, you can probably imagine I did not model Godzilla completely from scratch. There's some really great resources online where you can find some 3D models of characters and creatures just like this. So this specific model that I found actually was from turbosquid.com. So if you want to go get this, if you go to turbosquid.com, this is like the first result. If you type in Godzilla, and you can get this same exact model. I think it's just about $150, which if you consider how long it would take someone to 3D model this and texture it and rig it and all these crazy things, doing step by step by step, it's actually a pretty good deal. So a lot of times I will start looking on these asset websites. If you're taking notes as well, I love TurboSquid. CG Trader is my next go-to website. And then after that, it is the ArtStation Marketplace. These are great places to get characters, but also just 3D models for your environments. I'll share some more great resources later for that as well. But those are some of my favorites. And this is the mesh. So you can see it's not a billion polygons. It's nothing crazy. This is something that we can work with, that we can animate all in real time, but it still looks fairly good up close. I also personally know I love adding in some nice camera shake, believable camera shake, but if someone was actually running away from Godzilla in the city street, that camera is going to be shaking. It's not going to be on a tripod. So yeah, that is Godzilla. And then if you want to animate a character inside of Unreal, there's 2 workflows that we'll cover today. So the first one is with Control Rig. So what is Control Rig? Control Rig is Unreal Engine's proprietary system. It just means it's exclusive to Unreal. It is Unreal's system for animating characters inside of the editor. So usually you'll either animate in Unreal or you'll animate in another software like Maya or Blender. But I find time and time again, and you'll see as I walk through this whole workflow, you save the most time when you never leave Unreal. You want to stay in Unreal the entire time you are making films if you want to take advantage of this workflow. And the reason why is we can see everything in real time. It's real-time rendering. We're not waiting around for renders like if you're waiting at the end of a Premiere project or an After Effects project or Blender or Maya and you're waiting around for your renders. We just get to zoom around our scene, look at different camera angles, try things out, try out different poses, and very, very quickly start to assemble some different shots. So control rig is the way we do that. It's how we animate characters. Now, specifically on this project, and I want to make sure that this is a mindset that all of you start to take on, because again, I've been on my own as a visual effects artist throughout the years, working on passion projects, having a day job, and then coming back at home and always having some project that I'm working on. And one gigantic mistake I see a lot of creators and visual effects artists make is that they think, okay, I'm working on my personal project. I need to do this all by myself. I need to do this alone. This is my dream. It's my idea. It has to be me, and no one can do it quite like I can. And I'm here to tell you that might be holding you back. And I know it held me back for a very long time because I tried to be a character animator and I tried to sculpt all my own characters and I tried to build every building in my environment. And the reality is, if you want to be a filmmaker, if you want to be a director, and that's how I like to look through this whole filmmaking process, is through the lens of a director. They are not building their own sets. They are not doing their own makeup. They are working with a team, albeit sometimes it's a big team, sometimes it's small. And the same is true on your own personal visual effects projects. So the way I approach the control rig on this, and this is totally a true story, the morning I was going to start on this, I was looking around at models, and totally randomly on LinkedIn, I saw a post from Sanal Deep, who is someone who is a control rig artist. He works over at DNEG, and literally he just showed like, hey, I just made this new bug rig, and it was not a Godzilla rig, but he just showed, hey, he also loves making passion projects on the side. So I sent him a DM, and very quickly I was like, hey, do you want to work on this? Here's some screenshots. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I got. Here's the story I want to tell. And he was interested, and he wanted to make it with me. And you'd be surprised. Like, that is how so many personal projects get put together. Sometimes you just gotta be the first person to extend the hand, shoot your shot. If you find someone who does great work online, just shoot them a DM. And I know this might seem super basic. I'm sure a lot of you people know this intellectually, but when is the last time you personally have done this? I bet maybe it's never, or it's been a while. And I also get in the habit of doing this a bunch for a couple months, and I completely forget for like a year or two. It's like, oh crap, I gotta work with people this whole time. So again, it sounds like a small thing, but definitely write it down. Work with other people. If you're on a film set, you're not working by your own. You can't hold the camera and be the actor yourself. Even when we're working on these small projects, try to find other people. So in this project, I did pretty much everything except, and this is a big except because I had some really awesome people help out, is Sanal Deep helped do the control rig. And then the other side of this is the character animation. So all character animation happens inside of Sequencer. This is the menu inside of Unreal that you'll be using to animate anything if you're inside of Unreal. So this means if you're gonna animate a character, or it also means if you're animating the helicopters, or if you're animating the lights, like the explosion in this shot, that's a light animating really brightly on impact. And I'm just adding in a keyframe saying, okay, right when he hits and connects with the helicopter, let's add an impact. Let's animate a light super bright. There's also lots of lights that I'm actually constantly moving throughout this shot. So I'm attaching different lights to the helicopters, so they work like spotlights, and it's literally moving in 3D space and pointing over at Godzilla here. And then obviously we're animating in the muzzle flashes and all that stuff, and the helicopter propellers. All these things, there's lots of animation, and then obviously the camera itself. Everything we're animating gets animated inside of Sequencer, and Sequencer is actually very easy to use. It's just like an editing timeline, like you might be used to in Premiere or Resolve or Final Cut or even After Effects. It's very similar to like a timeline, like After Effects or any of those softwares. Except you can animate anything you want inside of your 3D scene, from the characters to the lights to the props to anything you want. So yeah, that's the idea here. And if we jump ahead, I went through, and I'm gonna walk through the entire previs process here, but basically I'll walk through that in the next chapter, and we'll dive in on the exact thought process and how to do it efficiently and how we can learn some really cool techniques from Pixar. But once I had that previs created for this sequence, Again, I'm not a character animator. I've spent a lot of years learning compositing and lighting and the filmmaking side of things, but not character animation. So on a project like this, I definitely knew, okay, I need to go out and get a character animator and find someone who wants to work on this with me. And that's where I found John Abenhaim, who's from the channel Watch Me Animate on YouTube, which is super cool. So I created the previs, I made the film, I made the edit, I made the sound effects. And again, I'll share that whole process with you. I think that's going to be one of the most interesting parts of this this whole class is the previs side of this. So we'll definitely get into that. But then we brought Jonathan on, and he's a great animator, but funny enough, he doesn't really know Unreal. So he didn't use Unreal at all in production, and we were able to get him up to speed in just a single day, walk him through how to move this rig around, how to go from poses to actually animating him in order, so that we could go from these screenshots and these different shots in the previs and turn them into character animations. And that is how we approached the animation of Godzilla. So I know what you're probably thinking. Does that mean that you have to be a character animator to use Unreal? Because that can seem a little prohibitive. And I'm here to tell you, you do not need to be a character animator. Again, I'm not, and I love using Unreal because I use this very specific workflow that cuts out all of the roadblocks and all of the landmines that cost you a bunch of time as you're trying to get into animation, because a lot of times you just need people in your scene doing one type of action. But if you literally animate every part of that character by hand, it can take days, months, weeks, and even longer if you're not great at animating. So how can we animate in a really simple, fast, and easy way? So I want to walk through how I animated the crowd in this shot, in this whole sequence, because it's a very cool workflow that you can start applying, one, to just make crowd shots like this, but also you can turn it into fight choreography later on. So we'll show you both of those. So this is how we made the crowd for this shot here. We have like 20 different people running and fleeing from Godzilla, but I didn't animate any of them by hand. So just like with Godzilla, you can get character models anywhere. And this workflow I'm about to show you, we're going to show you how you can add animation to any character, to any 3D model. And that model doesn't need a rig. It doesn't need any part of it already animated. You just need a 3D model of a human. So you can find these anywhere. I got this from a pack made by Big, Medium, Small, which is just an asset pack website. They make some really good stuff. I think there's a link in the description for this pack of characters, but I needed a crowd, but I didn't want to rig all of these by hand, and I didn't want to animate all of these. So we can get a free rig and free animation by uploading these to Mixamo.com. Now, if you haven't heard of Mixamo.com, it's just a huge asset library of different animations, but why I specifically love it for Unreal and for any beginner out there is you don't need to rig your own characters. You don't need to worry about bones and weight painting and all this stuff. All you need is a 3D model like we have here. You just export this out of Blender as a .fbx file, and then you can upload this into Mixamo.com, which is a completely free website. You just assign the wrists, the chin, the elbows, the knees, and the groin, and it will go ahead and make that rig for you. And then once you go through this process, now you can search through their animation library for run animations or like hiding and ducking and running and tripping and falling and all these things. And you can get pre-existing animations for this character. So you can see we already have animations applied to this crowd character, him turning around, looking around, but we haven't had to do anything manually yet. So that is the power of Mixamo.com. Again, some of you might know this intellectually. If you've been on YouTube for a while and you've worried about characters, I'm sure at some point you've come across Mixamo. But this is the thing too, so many people apply it to one project and then the rest of their projects have no characters. It's one of the biggest tells for beginner work is that you you built a city and there's no people inside of it. What's wrong? So you got to add characters, you got to have people. It really, really helps your projects. And then basically what happens is Mixamo gives us a download link. So it will give us a .fbx file. And from there, we can literally click and drag this into Unreal. We're going to import our character as something that is called a skeletal mesh. If you're brand new to Unreal, a skeletal mesh is just another word for a character in Unreal. That's just the game dev term. It's just a character. That's all you need to know. So you just import this as a skeletal mesh, and then we'll import the animations along with it. And then what this lets us do inside of Unreal is it lets us drag and drop those animation clips in this really intuitive way. So we don't need to keyframe our characters and like have their arms move and animate their legs and their knees and their head and their neck and everything. We can just combine these animation clips together inside of Sequencer. So this is going to walk through exactly how. So we've added our character into Unreal, then you just drag and drop that character into Sequencer, which again, Sequencer is just our timeline that we can scrub back and forth. And then once we have our character inside of Sequencer, we can add in these animation tracks. And these animation tracks are just those clips that we downloaded from Mixamo. So here we have our dude running in place. We're just drag and drop that in. And then let's look through for another clip here. And we have this fast run clip. And then from here, we have these two clips, but we can actually start to combine them together and have one start where the last one finished. So what I'm doing here is we have this run clip and we have this clip of him looking behind. And by literally just stitching the two together back to back, we are able to combine them in a way where he actually runs away. It looks correct. Everything looks like it's a real human. But we just used two animation clips and made two keyframes to kind of stitch them together and have them travel through the world. And the way we're doing this and the way we're combining these animations together is through a process called motion blending. So if you want one takeaway of something to dive in further after this, motion blending is the key word here. But basically what motion blending lets us do is it lets us take two animation clips that are completely different. Then you just right click on one of those animation clips and say, hey, match the bone of our previous clip, and then it will realign them when we're kind of transitioning between our two animations, and then it does all of the hard work for us. It lets us stitch these multiple animations together in this really intuitive way. And then literally to create a crowd, we just need to duplicate our character over and over and over again. So I'm going to duplicate him. I'll offset him to the left. There's also this thing called additive tracks inside of Unreal, where you can literally just offset your character by adding, let's go like 5 meters to the left, and just do that for the entire time. And then we can also start to put together a little bit of a performance. So it doesn't just have to be characters running away. That's cool and that's great, especially if we have a crowd. We need some of that happening. Godzilla's right behind us. But what if we wanted to pretend like, hey, this dude's about to get crushed under Godzilla's foot? How do we do that? Well, we can do a lot with those couple animation clips. So in this instance, I'm just gonna add in another clip. And I'm just looking down here and we can see, okay, there's like a stumble backwards clip. That could be cool. So he actually falls to the ground. So if we let this play, you can see, okay, our dude kind of stumbles back and falls backwards. So we could have him fall back and then literally get stomped by his foot. But it could be cool and a little bit more, PG-13 if he stumbles back just out of harm's way. So we can just rotate him around. And again, we don't have to worry about the animation. We're just gonna, we'll just rotate him into place and we'll worry about the composition. We'll think of the shot like a filmmaker, but we don't have to think about it like an animator if that's not something that you're already great at. So that's why I love using Unreal for animation and for characters, is it makes this process really, really easy. And like you can see here, just right click on that clip, go to the motion blending options, and then just match this with the previous clip. And just like that, if you can see our little dude in the background, he falls backwards, and we've now stitched these two animation clips together. So that is the big workflow there. It's simply taking our characters. We don't need to worry about rigging. We don't need to worry about animation. We're gonna take a model off the internet. We're gonna bring it into Mixamo, and then we'll generate the rig. We'll get these animations for free, and then we just stitch them together by blocking them together inside a sequencer. And very quickly, just like that, we can start to put an entire crowd running away from Godzilla and create this little performance with not spending too much time. Because typically, if you think about keyframing an entire crowd and animating every character by hand, this could easily take weeks and weeks. But using this trick of using Mixamo, very, very quickly, we can apply animations to our whole crowd. Pretty cool, right? Hope that gives you a little bit of a better context of how to use Mixamo, how to take it one step further and continue to duplicate and offset those animations into the future and into the past, so that we can actually combine all of those crowd animations together. So that is how we approached the crowd. And then obviously we used control rig for Godzilla. So we had him animated by hand. We used Mixamo for those characters. And this is the same technique I used here on this example project, which is actually a free download when you join our Unreal Crash course over at unrealforvfx.com. But yeah, we use Mixamo animations to assemble fight choreography. I think we combined like six or seven different animations together to create this in a really, really fast way. So that's how we can apply that technique even further. It's not just for crowds or in the background, it can also be your hero characters. But the last thing we'll touch on here in terms of animation, the easiest way by far, if you're just starting out and you want to just think about, okay, what's the simplest type of film I could create? Then I would absolutely start out with vehicles. The easiest way to animate is with vehicles, not with characters, not with arms, legs, and fingers and toes and all this stuff. If we use vehicles, it just lets us simplify what we need to worry about. And it's like animating a cube versus animating a human. You know, if we're adding life to a bouncing ball or a bouncing cube, it's a lot more simple. And vehicles are very similar in that way. So we animated all of the helicopters, or it's not helicopter. Well, there's helicopters and there's this Bristol Bulldog model, which is this cool World War II plane. So we had both of those models in this short film. And there's some really cool things you can do inside of Unreal. So you can make something called a follow spline node. This is the blueprint itself if you want to screenshot this. But yeah, you can create splines inside of Unreal, and we can have our plane model just follow along this spline, so we can actually worry about the flight path instead of worrying about keyframing our plane here. So that's why I like using Unreal. You can do some really fun tricks like this. If you just type in follow spline tutorial, that's all I did there, nothing crazy. But you don't have to worry about blueprints just to animate a simple vehicle. A lot of vehicle animation is just 2 keyframes. It's adding rotation and movement to a plane like this, and then it's adding secondary animation to the propellers so that we get all of that animation coming together. And just by, literally, we have 2 keyframes. We have a keyframe for our rotation so that we can have our plane banking left and right. And very, very quickly, we can just continue doing this, and we don't have to worry about characters. We don't have to worry about anything fancy. We can just set a starting point and an end point for our plane and start animating in between those 2 points. And that, to me, is always the best, fastest way to get up to speed and start making films in Unreal. And then obviously you can't make a film without characters. So I'm gonna go through a couple camera techniques really, really quick. And one thing I love to do with planes is just by taking our camera here, and even though they're far away, basically what I'm doing in Unreal here is I'm parenting our camera to our plane, or I'm attaching this camera to our plane so that this camera stays, let's say, 10 feet away from our plane at all times, so that when our plane is flying through the air, it stays in the same spot as far as our camera is concerned. So we can very quickly block out some high speed action shots, and we could take this camera, we can attach it to this plane, and just like a GoPro as well, you can mount it onto this plane, something that'd be so difficult to do in real life, obviously. But very quickly, you just attach your camera onto this plane, and we can get these cool point of view shots. We can also parent it to the wings, to the cockpit, from a gunner looking out the window. And actually, we have another cool shot right after this, where this is kind of attaching it to the wings of the plane as it's flying through. But we could also apply it over the shoulder of our pilot. And again, all we're doing here, we're just parenting the camera to our plane model here. And then very quickly, we can have this pilot flying through the air. We have this cockpit fully rigged out, so we can add the animation of the dials, of it speeding up and the RPMs increasing and the engine getting louder, and start to build our story, build our characters without worrying about lots of faces and character animation. And that's the real idea that we're trying to show you here, is what are the ways we can still tell cool stories, some great action scenes, without having to worry about complex character animation. And another look at this is actually putting a camera inside of a helicopter. So like I said, we have these helicopter models, and with this setup here, we had our soldier, he's in the helicopter, and again, just parenting that soldier and the camera to that helicopter so that we can animate that helicopter throughout the air. We can animate that back and forth, so we're adding animation to our helicopter, but that camera stays locked in inside of the viewport like a cameraman in there, like shooting a documentary, shooting Godzilla from a real airplane. But the idea here to take away is we just want to really, sometimes I think people overcomplicate digital cameras. The best way to approach these is approach it like a filmmaker. What are the types of shots you could get in real life? And we're not trying to create something that couldn't exist in real life. In fact, we're trying to mimic what are the real life camera moves that we could recreate inside of Unreal. So yeah, that's kind of a look through all the types of animation we used here. So we had character animations, we had using control rig on Godzilla so we could animate him entirely in engine, and we'll go into that a little bit further in the next chapter, how we did that, how we plotted out the whole sequence. We're going to talk about previs in this next chapter. But yeah, just wanted to walk through that character workflow, how you can bring characters into Mixamo, rig them for free, and also as a bonus pro tip, for those of you taking notes, for those of you beginners who hopefully, if you don't have Unreal installed, install it now while we're here. You might as well. Like, let's get the ball rolling. But again, for those of you that are beginners, definitely a thing that you can use as an awesome resource to download characters with rigs, with animations already. If you want some really great free resources, Mixamo is really great. But if you go to the Unreal Engine Marketplace and you just type in Paragon, Paragon, you'll find over 40 AAA video game characters that you can use on your own project. So if you just want to jump in and you just want to get started, just like I did when I was first learning Unreal, I wanted to show you how we did it on this Godzilla project, but I want to make sure that you know you do not need paid assets to get started whatsoever. You can use assets for free on Mixamo. Mixamo has free characters, and then there's also those Paragon assets that you can find for free on the Unreal Marketplace. So definitely use those. I just want to make sure everyone coming out of this has a roadmap of the steps they can take next to learn Unreal a bit faster and just start making films inside of Unreal. So hopefully that helps there. But that is vehicle and character animation inside of Unreal. Is that cool? Hope that helps. Also seeing Oh Hey Void, super cool to see you. Chris Woodrum, cool. And yeah, Chris, I think the next thing is going to be awesome too, because we'll show you how we can start actually creating previs in the next chapter here. So there you go. You have a free resource to animate every character with Mixamo.com. So next, let's go to our next chapter, the shortcuts to build cinematic environments faster and easier. So I guess I lied. We're going to cover this and then we'll get into previs. But yeah, this next chapter are going to be all of the lessons I learned from working at visual effects studios for a number of years and trying to figure out what are those four chords of filmmaking and of visual effects that we can apply to our own work, and what are those cool techniques that you can start applying to build environments faster and easier than ever before. So yeah, these are some of the shots I put together on Godzilla versus Kong. This was a really cool project. Like I said earlier, this is the first time I was a lead compositor. So obviously with that, a lot of cool things, really proud of a lot of that work, but also it was my first time as a lead and there's lots of things I would change and lots of regrets that I'm sure come with every project once you finish it. So yeah, this project, the Unreal version of this, obviously was pretty fun because it gave me an opportunity to fix any of those mistakes I felt like I made back in the day. And I wanted to share some of those so that you can see what goes into making these complex cities in a really simple way. So again, the basics are where everyone trips up. I cannot stress this enough. You must always start from reference. And again, everyone intellectually knows this. Like if I asked you and I was like, hey, you need to use reference, you'd be like, oh yeah, of course I need to use reference. But I'm telling you, so many juniors, people starting out, people building demo reels, you make one or two projects with reference and then you end up thinking you're too good or hey, I can skip it for now. I'm telling you, every senior level artist at all the big studios, they use reference every single time. And the more and more I've been at studios, the thing I actually recommend more than just gathering reference on the internet is if you can go out and find a real location, like go out and see the real world with your eyes. So that's actually what I did on this project. So this is a cool project, or sorry, this is a cool part of town. I'm in Montreal, so this is just in Chinatown, down the road from where I'm at. And I was able to bring this together. I've seen, yeah, I lost my video there, so I'll fix that up in a second. But yeah, I could actually go out, I could see all these elements, I can see the brightness of the sky, how bright the neon signs are, all of that really bright light on the street. And also I can see, like, look at all these office buildings. If I look at the brightest part of this image, it's not the sky or these neon signs, these red neon signs, it's actually these office buildings on screen left. And the reason why is we're literally looking directly at a light source here. We're looking directly up at a light. And the same is true for street lamps and for headlights from cars. You're looking right at a direct light bulb, and obviously that's going to flare out the lens more. It's going to be brighter. You're looking at the source itself. So we want to be cautious of that, and then we can also see what it looks like to have this really bright cast light over on these buildings. I'm also seeing here that my camera went dead here, so I'm just going to fix it up really, really quick. Just give me like 1 minute here. I'll put on our elevator music for just a second, and I'll get that fixed up, and then we'll get rocking for the rest of this rest of the class. All right, we're back. I think we got everything back in action. Let's just double check that everything's working as we're getting back into things here. Yeah, we are good to go. All right, let's keep going. Thanks for hanging in there. Okay, so so we got our reference here, and the big thing I started learning once I started working at visual effects studios and was able to talk to some really great senior level artists is the difference between a junior level artist and a senior level artist is that a senior level artist sees the world differently. They literally see things that you don't see at all, that are invisible to your eye, just because you haven't developed your creative eye. And there's no problem with that. Actually, the whole goal that I'm trying to go through here is I want to improve your creative eye by the end of this course, because that ultimately the tools all change, but I want to make sure that the thing that you can take with you to any software, to any medium, is your own creative eye and your own creative vision. So that's why I love really hunting down great references. I like to find photographs. It's great to know what's been done in movies, but I always prefer to find photographs, and I want to find things in the same time of day, under the same lighting conditions. In this case, you can see that our city is obviously super foggy in this reference, which I think was cool. You could do this during a totally clear day, but again, I want to find the coolest version of this, so I wanted to find some pictures that are here at night, so we get the foggy lights, a lot of contamination into the sky. Obviously, water at night has a really cool look as well. So we want to find this in the coolest scenario, and then we also want to find some pictures looking up close. So in this case, I'd want to find close-ups of the buildings, looking at street level. And you can see I have a reference for each point of view here. I have something up close on the buildings, something far away for the city, and then something at the street level with our original reference. So that's our goal here. We just want to recreate that point of view and recreate the camera's point of view and get real-life footage from every single scenario. And then once we have that, we can obviously go in and start creating the set. So like I said, I started this from a pack from bigmediumsmall.com. They have a Tokyo Back Alleys pack, which if you're interested, you can check that out in the description of this video. But yeah, it's a really great pack, looks great up close, and I wanted to give myself the best shot possible. But you can see after I laid everything out, this is great for the street level, but this is only like 6 buildings, and we do need to try to build out an entire city. So, if you're just duplicating 6 buildings and trying to recreate New York City, you're going to have a hard time because there's a lot more variations of all the different buildings. So that's another problem that we have to tackle here. So a lot of times, even when you start from existing models, you need to find other ways to combine them with other packs to bring things together. So what I did here is I found some cool skyscraper models. There's some that were free off CG Trader, and then I also took some off of Kitbash 3D. And Kitbash is a cool website. They have some really great models for backgrounds and for concepts, but they don't always look perfect up close for like visual effects purposes. But it is a great resource, and we ended up using them on here. But we had to upgrade these so they actually looked good from the camera's point of view. So there's 3 big tricks that we applied here that are going to save you a lot of time when you're trying to build these nighttime city environments. If you're ever making a city, you're ever doing a sci-fi, neo-noir type thing, some Blade Runner or sci-fi city, anything like that, this will apply to any environment like that. So a big way to save time is by not modeling every single thing in your scene. This might seem a little counterintuitive at first, but hear me out. So a huge thing that a lot of people think they need to do in Unreal is you need to have a physical 3D model for every building. But honestly, that is one of the ways to just give yourself a hard time and struggle to make an environment like this, where there are literally 80 different types of buildings here. Literally, we just can't model every single one of them if we want to put a film project together in less than a week. So what do we need to do instead? So instead of modeling everything, all I did was place a couple of these city buildings in our background, but instead of modeling the background, I actually brought in images into Unreal. So I just created a material. I changed that material over to an unlit material. That's the only button thing you have to know there, only thing you have to change. And if we make this an unlit material, we could literally take our image texture here and just plug it into the emissive channel, or the channel that's going to cast lights into our scene, and we can literally just drag and drop in these different images. So I have 4 or 5 different images of Hong Kong that I used in the background. I got these from unsplash.com, so they're completely free to use for copyrighted stuff, which is cool. Unsplash.com is a really great resource for references and for matte paintings. But yeah, then we can take these images and we can place them in the background. We can shrink them, stretch them, rotate them, and then make a bunch of different variations. And basically, I want to bring these in as early as possible so I can start to see, like, okay, where does this work and where does it break? Because at a certain point, you'll be able to tell, okay, it's literally just a picture in the background. So if it starts to look like that, okay, then just let's put a couple buildings in front, let's put a couple buildings behind. And just like that, we can start to assemble our scene in a pretty intuitive way. And you can see I started out with 2 or 3 skyscrapers in the shot here, and then I added in some pictures into the background and then moved them around until I like the composition. And the reality is here, I'm sure some of you are thinking like, oh, maybe that's cheating or that's not the right way to do this. But the reality is, if your goal is to make photorealistic visual effects, we want to start from photographs. We want to start from real stock footage and real pictures. So we're actually just giving ourselves an easier time. It's easier to find those images than model all of these ourselves. And it's just going to look more realistic if we're using pictures. So don't shy away from this. It's not some impure method. This is as valid as anything else. And you'd be surprised. This is something we're doing all the time on set for virtual production environments. We're using every trick in the book. And one of those big tricks is obviously using matte paintings or pictures as your matte paintings and throwing those in the background of your shot. So we're going to do a similar thing too to create these office buildings. So like I said, they're really bright in our shot. And if we had this is real life reference here, but if we had these buildings and the interiors were just completely black for an entire city, it's not going to work out. It just that's not what a real city looks like. You need office buildings or apartment buildings inside of all of these different skyscrapers. So again, you can screenshot this if you like. This is the exact material I set up. Steal it if you want it. But what I did here is I created something that is a tool in Unreal called decals. So instead of modeling all of these interiors of these buildings by hand, I just took images of interiors of buildings, and I'm using a decal to just slap this image on top of our building. And decals, you might know them from video games. Like decals traditionally are used for like bullet holes. Where like, okay, you need a way to dynamically add bullet holes if someone's shooting a wall in Call of Duty. So typically they're used to just add in these little stencils or little stickers of images that we can just put onto any surface, but we don't have to use them for bullet holes or destruction. We can use them to build entire buildings. So literally, once we have them set up here, I can just drag these on top of our building. I can stretch these out. I can scale them bigger or smaller. And just like that, I can fine tune these and add in all these little office buildings, and it only takes a couple minutes instead of modeling something by hand or doing some crazy complicated method. If you had to do this in Maya or Blender, this would be such a pain. But instead of worrying about some complicated material, we can just make a decal. And again, you can literally just screenshot that and recreate this. It's super, super basic. There's just like 8 nodes total that go into this. And then you have these images that you can move around and start to design these buildings. And what's super cool is that once you set this up on one building like we have here, we can also grab all of these different decals and we can literally copy and paste them over to a different building. So that's why decals are a really cool tool. And again, decals are something only in Unreal. So they're something you might not be familiar with if you're coming from another package like Blender or something like that. But you can see here, yeah, we literally can just copy and paste them, apply them onto these other buildings. And just like that, we can flesh out this entire city in just a few minutes instead of taking all this time to add in geometry for every single building. Is that cool? Hopefully that's like a new way to, I think decals are a thing I constantly forget. Like, oh, you can push these really, really far. A lot of people just use them to add tiny details into their scene, but no, you can do a lot. You can add images anywhere in your scene using decals and image planes, or those matte paintings that we created. And then lastly, another cool technique that I love, love, love. This is something that I actually learned after working on Godzilla versus Kong. So, and it's something that I like to call glow cards. So when we have these pictures at night, when we have these foggy environments, you can see that the color of the sky here, it's actually the color of our neon lights. Like it becomes gray here, but you can see that the blue neon signs contaminate blue over here. The red and blue signs here contaminate light out into the sky. And you can even see that these signs are casting this really bright light onto the buildings themselves. So this light actually, it almost looks purple at the bottom here, but that's literally because we have a red and a blue light added together, and red and blue makes purple. So that's why it's purple light cast onto the scene. But yeah, we want a way to create this volumetric fog effect around our glowing lights. This is a really cool way to add depth and just add color into our scene, because it's really easy for our scene to turn into this yellow and black image. We have yellow street lights and yellow office lights, and then everything else is kind of black. It becomes kind of boring and not very photorealistic. So a way that we can, a technique here that I love is adding glow cards. And this is basically a simple way, in a way we're gonna cheat Unreal and add volumetric fog and give us full creative control, so we can use fog like an art director instead of fog from traditional old school visual effects pipelines like in Blender or Maya. Fog usually is incredibly slow, incredibly hard to work with, but we can work with it in a really fun way inside of Unreal. So a really quick background of this, a very short story, how I first came across this technique was actually back on Alien Covenant. So this was one of the first feature films I'd worked on in a visual effects department as a compositor. And it was very cool, because when you're working at a studio, you have the chance to work by all these senior compositors and all these senior level artists. You can literally go through an entire show and look at all of the best shots on the entire movie and open up the project files, see exactly how they made all these different shots. But it was really cool at first, because I could open up these scripts and see exactly what nodes they were using, exactly what tools they had on this project, and I could paste them into my own shots. But my shots didn't necessarily look better. And maybe you felt the same way if you followed, a tutorial step by step. You can kind of match exactly what they did, but when you start to make your own image, it doesn't look as good as the example. And this is the classic issue with learning this artistic skill. Everyone's looking for these magic bullet tutorials online that tell you all the buttons to press to make a beautiful image. But the reality is, it's actually all these artistic techniques that are gonna make your images look better. It's not these tools that you'll find inside of Unreal. They're great to have this come together, but you need to be the artist behind these skills. So when I was on Alien Covenant, one of the biggest lessons I learned in this artistic concept that I just didn't see in my own work and I wasn't able to apply was something which is adding depth into your shot. So I had this shot. I was sitting in this cluster of 4 different people, and we constantly would share our shots and say like, hey dude, Emilio, come over, roast my shot. Tell me what's wrong with it. Give me 5 notes. Just tell me anything that's wrong with it so I can get better. And I was like, dude, how did you do that shot? Like, this shot looks pretty flat. It looks pretty boring. How do I start to make my shots look huge? Like, I feel like there's something that's preventing me from having these look like, you know, a Hollywood level visual effects shot. He's like, dude, you're not adding any depth into your shot. I was like, what do you mean by depth? What was cool about Alien Covenant is they actually shot a lot of this first sequence on location in New Zealand, in this area called Milford Sound. So Milford Sound is a real place. This is real footage of Milford Sound. This is not from Alien Covenant anymore for this shot. But you can see there's all these different mountains and all these clouds intersecting with the different mountains. And it's this super unique spot on Earth. But because they shot a lot of this on location, Emilio was able to show me, like, hey, look at how much depth all these different clouds are building in this shot. And let's start to actually look at this and break this down. So how can we build depth with an image like this? So if we look at the clouds in the foreground versus the clouds in the background, you can see that this cloud looks pretty huge on screen left. And if you look all the way into the distance, look at how small this cloud is now. But because you can kind of see the size of it, it looks like they're the same size, but one is just way further away. And that's this effect that you get when you have things in your midground, in your foreground versus your background, is that they're the same size. Like let's say that this cloud is 200 feet wide, let's just say as a pure example. Well, that cloud in the background is also 200 feet wide, but it appears much smaller because it's further away. So to add depth, all we need to do is just add these different layers into the foreground, midground, and background to start to separate our different mountains and our different geometry. So the clouds kind of separate out the mountains from the background. You can see the stuff that's closer to us is darker. The stuff that gets further away has more atmosphere and more fog. You literally can see the fog get like bigger and bigger the further into depth we go in this image. And we want to apply this to our own visual effect shots, because this to me looks very cinematic. Even though no one created this, this is good old Mother Nature. It's just what life looks like. But we can see that there's something nice about these images. We get lots of depth and fog and atmosphere, and we need to apply this to our own visual effects. And we can do that using this technique called glow cards. So in the last masterclass I had, I showed you how to create cloud cards to add depth into your shots. So they're these simple images. They're just clouds that intersect with our environment that help separate out the foreground, midground, and background. But if instead of using a cloud texture, we just use a texture of volumetric fog, of just this soft fall off of fog going out into the air. So this is just a circle blurred out, very, very simple, but we can use this really simple texture and we can change the color of this texture to start adding in glowing lights coming from the ground and from the skyscrapers. So if we look back at those references, we have these yellow and orange lights coming from the ground, from street level. We have all the street lamps, we have all the headlights, we have all of these different lights coming from the ground. We want to keep that warm, we want to keep that bright, and then we want all of the lights above the skyline to be blue, or we want it to match the color of the neon lights. So we have this red neon light here, we have these yellow lights that we have coming from the different apartments, and from here we literally are just taking this really soft texture and we're just placing this card in 3D space. And what I was doing on Godzilla vs. Kong is I was just doing this in a different 3D software. But because we're able to look at our final render all in real time when we use Unreal, we can do this dynamically. So to add some extra depth to this crowd, as you saw on screen left, I can add in this glow card, which again, it's just that picture, it's just that soft fall off. And then I'm using a node called a depth fade node, which just lets it transition softly into depth. So just like we saw that fog intersect with the clouds and get this really nice fall off, we can intersect our glow cards with the crowd or the buildings, and then we'll start to feel the black silhouettes of the characters in front, and it'll start to intersect through depth of our entire audience, of the entire crowd. And we can even add them into these explosions so we can add this atmosphere and bright light casting around this explosion here. And if you can imagine, is like, okay, wait, how do you animate your glow cards? Well, if you remember earlier, sequencer is where we animate everything. So just like you can animate characters and you can animate vehicles by just saying, hey, start here and end here, I can do the same thing with these glow cards and with the material by saying, okay, start off really dark at the beginning of the shot, and then when Godzilla stomps down on the ground, let's animate this glow card to go brighter. So we'll animate it brighter when he stomps down. And then basically all I'm doing here is I'm connecting a light and a glow card, and I'm animating those to get intense and bright all at the same time, so we can add some really bright impact and add in this explosion around the feet of Godzilla here. So these glow cards do a lot to help us add color, to add depth, to add atmosphere, and separate all of our different buildings, because we can see here our city's pretty, it's like black, dark, and blue. And by the end, we can add in all this different color. We get this nice red, orange, yellow, blue. And in a city, you need lots of different colors and lights for it to feel believable. If everything in a single city is just yellow, it's not going to look real. You need all this different variation. So we have little bits of green, of red, orange, blue, yellow, cyan, red, orange, over and over and over again to really start to make this look photorealistic. So is that cool? Those are 3 huge techniques that I use in every environment. It's glow cards, it's using matte paintings or images instead of building your entire environment. You can use pictures to save you a ton of time and help build environments faster. And lastly, I'll use decals, and I'll just take an image and I'll use that as the texture of a decal so I can just slap on anything I want. So sometimes it's the interior of an office building or an apartment, or it could be neon lights, it could be graphics, it could be anything you want. Just like a decal, you could spray on graffiti, you can spray on any neon signs or logos or anything like that, or even more different textures of buildings and office buildings, things like that, and just apply it over your entire city. And very quickly build out something pretty complex. So hopefully that's pretty cool. That's some cool techniques. That'll help us build environments much, much faster. So we've got 2 chapters here, so appreciate you guys chugging along. We'll probably end up going like another 30, 40 minutes here, just so you know here. So we're in the middle of it. We just shared some really cool techniques that you can apply to Unreal, but we haven't really focused in on how can we start as a filmmaker. How can we go from idea to final film without leaving Unreal and actually create a sequence, not just create a single visual effects shot? I'd love to ask a question to everyone here. How many of you consider yourself a filmmaker? Now, you don't have to have made a film in the last 20 days or anything like that, but how many would say you're like a filmmaker or a visual effects artist? Or if you call yourself something else, I know a lot of people love using Unreal. I've seen people make music videos with Unreal, so they're music producers, but they love making films. But yeah, how many people actually are looking to make films instead of just working at a visual effects studio? Sweet. Oh yeah. Oh, what's up? Oh hey, Void. Cool to see you here. He's a welcome face. Adam, you're more for filmmaking. That's cool. Well, yeah, this next chapter is going to be focused on how we can utilize some techniques from Pixar to create our films faster. Now, this is a trap. Whenever we start with Unreal, the first trap of filmmaking is animating too soon. Now, what do I mean by animating too soon? A lot of people fall for this trap of, okay, I want to make a film in Unreal. Let's start animating the cars and animating the characters and let's start making our final shots. But the problem here is if you start animating right away, you're basically working on the visual effects instead of working on your film. So until you have a film, and film is like a sequence with video and music, that is what a film is. Film is not just an image, it's not just video. Film is a sequence with a video, with picture and audio together. So a lot of people jump into creating visual effect shots in Unreal, but they haven't actually made a sequence first. So that's what I want to talk about here, is to rethink our filmmaking pipeline and take one step back first to focus on the filmmaking and storytelling side of things before we jump into being a technician inside of Unreal to try to make visual effects faster than ever. But that's not going to solve our story problems or our filmmaking problems if we don't fix those first. So what we need to do, instead of just jumping into final animation, is we need to create something called a story reel. Now, you might know this as a storyboard, what I'm about to show you here, but I actually learned this. I was reading this book, Creativity Inc., over Christmas break. And this is actually written by Ed Catmull. So he was the president of Pixar. He was the president before Steve Jobs bought Pixar. And during that transition is basically when they went from a tech company selling computers to an animation company telling some of the greatest stories ever told. And they've been one of the most decorated animation studios ever. And it's because of the way they make films. They basically founded modern animation, and so they had to learn all these lessons the hard way. And one of the biggest problems they realized early on is making films, especially back in 1995 when they were inventing CGI, is that CGI is such a slow part of the process that, again, if you jump into the animation, you're going to lose time. We haven't actually made our film look great first. So what they started to do is, before they worried about a single frame of animation, is they would make a storyboard first. Now, don't worry when you see this, you don't need to draw anything. In fact, I'm going to show you how we can create these inside of Unreal and how it's going to help you make films better than ever. Because the point of this is to focus on the story we're trying to tell. We're trying to see what are the reaction shots we're going to have. What are the establishing wide shots that'll help us see our entire environment in the first place. What are the major beats we're going to have inside of our story. But our goal here is not to just create a comic strip or a storyboard in the traditional sense. It's genuinely not our goal here, and that's not what, I'm not trying to convince you to just make a storyboard for the sake of it. Like I said, cinema is the mixture of video and sound. So the difference here is we want to create a story reel, which is an animated sequence with music and sound. So I think there's no better way to show you what I'm talking about than just to actually show you a good old-fashioned movie clip, and one from Pixar themselves. So this excerpt is from Michael Arndt, who's literally the Oscar-winning screenwriter of Toy Story 3. We'll share this clip here, but this is from an hour-long video essay that he's created on his YouTube channel. And it has like 30,000 views. This is the most criminally underrated video ever. He basically breaks down his entire screenwriting process with Pixar. And the way that they do this, really briefly before we jump into this clip, is that at Pixar, they don't just have a movie script. They actually create a story reel. Like, no one at Pixar reads movie scripts except for the writer themselves. The way they actually give feedback on their projects is they present story reels. They present these reels that I'm about to show you. They show an actual sequence with voiceover and dialogue and music and sound effects and all these different things. And the idea here is that just reading it on a page, it doesn't even matter if it works on the page as a story. What matters is, does this sequence work as a film? And that's what they're trying to figure out. So it's not just screenwriters at Pixar. They have screenwriters and what they call the story department, and they create these story reels that we're about to see so that they can actually create these. They'll spend time to create the first draft of their movie on paper, and then they will present it in front of other people. They'll say, what could this do better as a story, before they get into how could this get better as an animated film. So without further ado, let's take a look at this clip. I'll mute myself here and let's watch this scene from Toy Story 3. And this specific clip, just to tee it up for you so you get some context, Toy Story 3 is all about how Andy left home. He no longer wants to play with his toys. All the toys feel betrayed. Woody, Buzz, Jesse, everyone, they feel like they've been left and abandoned, and Woody wants to make the best out of a bad situation. And he's like, guys, what if we got donated to a kids care, child care place, a daycare, that's the word I was looking for. What if we got left off at a daycare? It's gonna be great because kids are gonna play with us. They want us to be there. They're at the right age. They wanna play with toys. It's gonna be awesome, right? And then this is their first day at daycare when the kids unleash, and it's not what they thought it was going to be. So let's roll the clip and we'll share this here.
They're here! They're finally here! Ah, I'm gonna be played with! Rex?
New toys.
So what was so cool about that little clip there, to me, is that you can see they're focused on the soundtrack and the video itself and the pictures. So you can see that they're actually focusing on telling the story, not on just making cool visuals. But they have all the funny moments, like those funny comedic moments of taking Barbie's head and putting it in blue paint and wiping it on the wall and putting green army men up their nose. And you can hear the turns in the characters, like when Woody's expectations get upset, you hear the rush of the kids going in. We have all of these clear dramatic moments and beats planned for us before we get into animation. And that's what we want. So naturally, the next question is, okay, that's cool, but how can we do this inside of Unreal? How can we do this so that we can create the video and the sound before the visual effects itself? Now, don't worry, we don't have to know how to draw because we can actually just screenshot inside of Unreal. So I'm gonna pull back the curtain and show you how I storyboard inside of Unreal, and definitely take some notes here, write it down, because this took me a while to figure out the very simplified version of this. And this is how I make films going forward now. I always start with this process. I never skip ahead of this anymore. And the key lesson here is that we want to pose, not animate. We want to take little pictures, little moments inside of our film itself, but we don't want to animate anything. So it might seem like, okay, but can we really tell a story just through screenshotting this and starting to put those screenshots in an editing timeline? But the reality is yes, if you start posing your characters. So just look at the difference between this image and this image. It has a completely different feeling, a complete different reaction, and that's the type of storytelling that we want to do in our story reels. We want to try to find poses, not of some stoic looking Godzilla looking stern, but if we want him bracing from the attack or looking off at 5 different helicopters ready to swat them away, like that's the type of thing that we can put into the pose, which we can do very quickly, whereas animation is going to take a lot more time and a lot more effort. So that's the mentality we want to have going into creating this storyboard. So this is the workflow. We want to screenshot our viewport. We want to add shots into our editing timeline. So in Premiere, in Resolve, in Final Cut. After we add those screenshots, then we can also add in different stills and clips from some of your favorite movies. If there's clips that you might be inspired in the middle of your sequence, like, oh yeah, it'd be like this and then this, but then what if we did this wide shot, kind of like Lord of the Rings or whatever that movie is that you love. Feel free to, if you just want to get this down, the whole idea is to build a first draft. Put it on paper, metaphorically speaking, get it all down, start with that idea, and then begin to evolve it as you go. So we're gonna add in stills and clips, then add in your music and sound effects, and then continue to refine your edit, move things back and forth, find better sounds, find better music, and as you find the pace of or the rhythm of your video, like that I feel like with that, there's a lot of musicality to film. There is a rhythm that comes with a lot of action scenes even, not just, music-driven films. So we want to find that rhythm and that pace in our sound, in our screenshots, and then after we'll go ahead and create previs and animate out each one of those shots. So this is what it kind of looks like, is we're just gonna go through and we'll screenshot these. These are the screenshots I made for this film. So we have Godzilla from attacking the city. We have our pilot flying in. Godzilla looks up, mid-attack. that pilot starts to fly in and swoop in. He starts firing down at Godzilla. We'd have the pilot kind of go in the foreground here and rush past Godzilla himself. Godzilla turns but can't reach, and then he screams out at the sky. Beautiful Godzilla roar out at the city. And this was just the starting building blocks. This was my draft one with screenshots, with no music. I started getting my scene together, and then I started to add in sound and see what types of clips were missing. So a big question I was asking myself, like, okay, we have this first draft, but let's think about the perspective that we're telling our story from. What's the point of view of the story? And to me, the scariest point of view would actually be from ground level. It'd be looking out on a city street up at Godzilla thinking, holy shit, it's gonna crush me. So I wanna actually put that into the film. I wanna actually tell the story from that point of view. So we can create a camera, we can put it at street level, looking up at Godzilla. We could add more crowd shots, looking down at the feet stomping down across the city. And just like that, we're able to add everything together. So that is our way where we're going to create a camera for every angle. We'll use that to create our storyboard. And a quick little hack here, for those of you that are a bit more used to Unreal, is you actually can just create a camera from your view inside a sequencer by pressing on this camera button. So you can move around in Unreal using the WASD keys, just like a video game. And in Sequencer, if you click this little camera button, it'll create a brand new camera from that point of view. So you basically have that camera position saved inside of Sequencer. You have a brand new camera for that angle. And if you want, you can also create a hotkey for this. Just go to your editor preferences and type in the word camera. And basically, you just have to create a new hotkey under create camera here. And this way, I can just type in Control-Shift-Alt-C, and I can go anywhere inside of my viewport, press this one quick little hotkey, and it'll automatically create a new camera for me right there on the spot, and very quickly block in a bunch of new cameras. And then I can save this and I can close Unreal, and I'll have the position of all those cameras saved so I can go back to it later. And that's really the idea here, is we're trying to just build our entire sequence up step by step by step. And then we're able to assemble our reel and start to edit it. Does that sound cool? Does that at least start to demystify part of this process and make storyboarding a little bit more approachable in Unreal? This took me a really long time to, again, it's very basic now that I've kind of laid it out, hopefully. The steps themselves are not tricky whatsoever, but it's really about the sequence of how we approach filmmaking and basically starting from the right foot. That's gonna allow us to make films 5 times, 10 times faster than visual effects studios even, because we're trying to build it in the right way and put our resources where we can. So once we have our storyboard built out, once we have our music locked, then it's really easy to go into Unreal. We'll start to add in tracks for our character rigs. So we're pulling in these character rig tracks inside a sequencer, and then we can go in and start to animate our rig, moving it up and down. And what's so cool about Unreal is literally to render out of Unreal takes, like, if it's a minute long shot, it'll take a minute to render. So it's super, super fast. That's my favorite part about Unreal. So very quickly, you can just render out your shot, drop it into your timeline, and it's already in your previs, just like that. So that's kind of the workflow and what it looks like with Premiere. And I figured it'd be best to just share what I've put together for the previs of this short. I think it'll give you a cool look behind the curtain. And yeah, so I'll share this here. It's always a little embarrassing for me to share like work in progress work. So look at it with ideas of, okay, this is the first draft of what we're building towards, and think of how could you do this, and how would you approach this for your own ideas. So let's play this here. So I hope that gives you a concrete look behind the curtain so you could see what I was thinking as I'm trying to put this whole sequence together to make it a little bit more character focused. And I hope you could see there as well how it kind of changed from those 8 initial screenshots into a little bit more of a character based story where we actually have a hero pilot that we're behind. And obviously we're working on that now. We'll show you where things are at as we go here. I'm just going to make sure that I have the original sequence saved so that we can take a look at that later. I think that'd be cool to take a look at the final film before we wrap up. So I'm just gonna set that up before we go back to the screen share here. But yeah, hopefully that gives you some concrete steps on how you can actually apply this to your own ideas. So the last chapter that I want to go through here is that well, I guess the first thing to know before we jump into the next chapter is from that, do you think you could create your own storyboard? Does that at least give you enough steps to start working today, start screenshotting your viewport, and start to assemble your first film inside of Unreal? Hope that gives you some concrete steps. I'm also seeing, who is that? Camilo Guerrero. How does this process work in a video game? So it would be the same process even if you're doing this for a video game. Personally, I like editing as a filmmaker. I like editing in the editing software that I'm most familiar with. So you can edit shots together inside of Sequencer, but I would personally recommend doing this process first, figure out the film, and then you can always go back and build it the right way in basically one whole sequencer timeline. That's how you would build it for a video game, is you'd have one sequencer timeline where everything happens all in the same scene. If we're making visual effects, we can kind of separate all these different shots out into different levels. All the different visual effect shots can basically have their own file names and be in their own maps, and they're basically just ways that we can make sure each shot looks the absolute best it possibly can. Versus a video game, all the objects have to exist in the same scene as your video game is playing. So, but that's really the only difference there. But that's how we can create a storyboard. And then once your edit is locked, you can start adding in details. So the last chapter here, this is the step that 90% of visual effects artists skip over. And it's my favorite. It's compositing. It's what I did on Hollywood Visual Effects as a feature film compositor and supervisor. I was a compositing supervisor on Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. And I want to share some really cool techniques that you can start applying right after this training to level up your renders and get some of these Hollywood visual effects secrets that took me a very long time to learn. So the biggest problem that I had working at visual effects studios and kind of using this old school way of visual effects is that the big problem is the more detail you add into your scene, the longer it takes to render. So if you use Blender or Maya or other 3D software, the more detail you add, adding in 50 more skyscraper buildings in the background is going to completely bring your render times to a crawl. It's going to slow down the whole process. So you're actually punished as an artist by adding in more detail and more creativity into your scene. So it's very limiting when you're at that point of like, I want to keep adding stuff into my scene that's not done yet. Well, that is a problem when you're not using Unreal, but when you, and yeah, this is that pixelated screen of death that I'm sure we're all used to and hopefully trying to avoid, where we're rendering the old school way inside of Blender or Maya. But what is so cool is, or I guess just to kind of illustrate that this problem first and foremost, is that if you were making a movie and a movie is 24 frames per second. And it's very typical on a feature-length movie, on something like Godzilla versus Kong or any major motion picture, is that it's going to take at least 1 hour per frame to render out a high-quality still for a visual effects movie. So, at a minimum, sometimes it takes 24 hours to render out one frame, which is just insane. But that's what you have to suffer through if you want to add a lot of quality into your shorts. At least that's what it used to be. So the problem with that is if you had to wait 1 hour for each frame of your movie, for your computer to render this out, and you're rendering your whole film on one machine. The big problem with this is that a 10-minute short film would take you 6 days to render out on one single computer. And that's if it took 1 hour to render each frame. And that is totally typical at a studio. Why that's not a problem at a visual effects studio is this idea called render farms. It's just basically a bunch of computers all next to each other, rendering out one frame at a time. So you basically have thousands of different computers in this data center rendering out one frame at a time. But as visual effects artists and filmmakers at home, like you and me, we have to have a different way of doing this because we cannot be using the same exact workflow. It's just going to take way too long. And the big problem here is you're just stopping at every single part of the workflow. You got to wait for renders when you have effects and animation and lighting and compositing. And every time you feel like you're making progress in visual effects, you end up stopping and waiting for rendering all the time. So your flow state gets totally messed up. You're constantly stopping as soon as you get started. And rendering just gets in the way from being creative if we make visual effects the way visual effects studios do right now. So that's why I have just gone all in on the Unreal workflow, is because if we want to make our own films from home, we need real-time rendering. We need to be able to render out our entire shot in seconds or minutes, not in hours or days. And that's what Unreal allows us to do, is really give us this high quality result, but do it in a fraction of the time. But all that being said, there are some very cool old school tricks that are still helpful today. And if you apply some of these old school Hollywood visual effects techniques to your Unreal renders, then you're really going to be able to put your work ahead of everyone else, and you're going to be able to do it faster than ever, because I basically put all the shortcuts so you don't have to spend a lot of time to elevate your renders. So let's go through that. So this is the shot I made this last week, and this is adding in rain and effects and lens dirt and adding in multiple lights. We have these police lights and these stoplights and these rain stock footage and explosion and dust and all these different elements. And this is what we want to add. We want to add in this last 10%, because if we just scrub between those two results, our Unreal render, it doesn't look bad. This totally works on its own, but it doesn't look great. It doesn't have that imperfection that you'll find from a real camera lens. We want to add in that beautiful rain and the things that are interacting with the lens and all these spotlights. And that's what we want to talk about here, is how can we really take these to the next level? And that's funny, incredible glow up. That's funny, Noble Gladiator. Yeah, and that's the idea. Is we want to glow up our shots. We want to make them look better, but we don't want to spend a lot of time doing it. So this leads us to adding stock footage into your renders. That's what we're going to talk about here. How can we add real life footage and add it into our Unreal renders? So what we need to do in order to do this is we're not going to do this in Unreal. We're going to do this in a software called Nuke. And don't worry here, Nuke is completely free for you to use on your personal projects. But yeah, the way we're going to do this, and write down, I'll give you a 3-point bullet list, checklist, whatever you want to say, on what you need to do this. So write this down, because we're going to go past how to do this quick, and I'm going to show you like the cool artistic techniques and not focus on the buttons to click. But the buttons to click, just so you have them, are you just are going to right click on your camera inside a sequencer, and you can just export your same exact camera from sequencer and bring it into Unreal. And then all we're going to do is we're going to render out 2 separate passes. So we're going to render out a depth pass and a position pass. And if you're looking to do this later, just come back and revisit this part of the video. Don't worry here, but it's all super easy to do. This is just in vanilla Unreal. Anyone can do this. It takes 20 seconds to set up. You just click these 3 buttons. So we're going to render out a depth pass and a position pass, and we're going to export our camera. And what that's going to allow us to do is that we can use that same 3D camera that we had in Unreal, but we can use that to add stock footage into our 3D scene. So that's what we're seeing here, is we're gonna add sparks, smoke, breath from Godzilla, rain and particle effects, and these, we'll start with these sparks. And basically all we're gonna do is we're gonna import our camera into Nuke. So you can see our camera here in our Nuke viewport. We have this spark footage. And then I have a node here called the image plane node. And this is just a 3D card. So you can see here, it's just a 3D plane that goes in our 3D scene that's projected out from the position of our camera, and this lets us add stock footage into our 3D scene, and it will basically add it in and mimic the exact same movement of our 3D camera. So we don't have to worry about matching it in. We can drop any piece of footage into our 3D scene, and using the depth pass, we can basically start to block out everything that's in front of our sparks here. So we can block out, or basically with our depth pass, we can make everything behind this building here, we can make this black, so everything that's black gets hidden, and everything that's white stays visible. And by remapping the colors of this, basically we can start to hide our sparks and bury them in the middle of our scene here so they start to intersect with Godzilla's foot. And then we can do this with dust particles, and we can intersect it with the city, and it starts to look like we actually have this real three-dimensional depth and this smoke cloud is going through the different blocks of this building. And I did the same thing with Godzilla's breath. So I just found stock footage of cold breath out there on the internet from Action VFX. And then I'm using the position pass here and what's called a PMAT node, which again, you can Google this. It's completely free. It's on Wikipedia. But yeah, basically we'll use this to block out the Godzilla, but this lets us make a mask in 3D space with our position pass, and it's going to let us block out half of Godzilla's face, so just his cheek can actually stencil out our smoke here. So it literally looks like that smoke is coming directly from Godzilla's mouth. So you can see we're cutting out the front half of his cheek, and we're kind of submerging the cold breath here in the middle of Godzilla's mouth. So by blending the depth pass and position pass and generating these masks together, we're able to combine stock footage and start to submerge it in the middle, in the depth of our 3D scene. So just like we did with the glow cards, we're doing the same thing, but with stock footage of this spark effect and the cold breath from Godzilla. And by using an image plane, our camera from Unreal, and we're creating a mask from either our depth channel or our position pass, we're able to kind of submerge all of these elements together. So that's cool. I went through that pretty quick. So let's take a look at one other shot here as well. So this is that same shot from earlier. And let's break down all of the layers that go into this. So right here we have our Unreal render. This is the original render that we got right out of Unreal. Again, solid start, but it's not going to win us any Oscars. And then we're going to start with this. And then we have our different render layers. So I rendered out rain as a separate pass. I rendered out two lights as a separate pass. And to render out separate passes in Unreal, a lot of people overcomplicate this as well. But all we need to do here is we're just gonna hide everything in our scene except for the thing we want visible. So, you know, it's what it sounds like. It's pretty basic, but if we want just the police lights like we have on the bottom right here, we have our police lights in our scene. If we want to render that out, all we want to do is just hide all the other lights in our scene except for these police lights and render out this pass on its own. And the same is true for the spotlight. So we have this spotlight here as well. So half of this is from Unreal. I rendered out the spotlight as its own pass. And then this lens flare and this really bright backlit, basically this volumetric flare, I actually made all of this inside of Nuke. So this is image textures. These are just images of, just like those glow cards as well, they're just images of lens flares and of these spotlights. And I'm literally just putting it on a card in 3D space and I'm moving it with our helicopter. I'm just animating it so it matches the same position of our helicopter. So we're just isolating different layers. So we're isolating lights and we're combining these with different layers in Nuke. And then lastly, we have this rain pass. So I have this Niagara particle system that renders out all the rain. That's now on its own separate layer. And then literally all I'm doing here is I'm adding them one layer on top of the other. So again, this seems very subtle. It's very easy to say, but specifically what I mean here, all light is additive. So if you add light or you add a render pass of a light onto the previous layer, and again, this is just your blending modes in Photoshop or in After Effects or in Nuke. It's just the blending modes, like you might know a screen blending mode or an add blending mode or overlay or soft light. all of those, it's the same thing as just adding. Or you might know adding is linear dodge in Photoshop. I think that's the weird name for that Adobe has. But again, we're just adding light on top of the background, and it's going to look identical to rendering it out in the first place. So basically, if we add everything together, it's going to look as if you rendered it correctly from the get-go. So we're just taking all these different lights, we're adding them together. And then I created stock footage from different rain. So instead of one image plane that's like submerged in the middle of the city, I basically made 4 separate image planes, one really close to the camera. Again, talking about depth, we have one really close to the camera. We have one in the midground. We have one in the background, and then one in the far background. So touching the back wall there as far as possible. And you can see I literally use different stock footage based on the distance of the rain. So I used a rain stock footage up close that looks up close, and then I found a different piece of footage for the background where the scale of that rain would be a lot smaller. It'd be, further away, it'd be far away into the distance. So again, just like we talked about depth earlier, we need to do the same thing with our rain to help build depth. And lastly, we have this dust stock footage, which comes in right at the end, but we have this dust cloud which is literally just 2 pieces of footage, and using those image planes, I didn't animate a single thing here. This is just taking that stock footage, applying it to image planes so they exist in the real depth of the world. And because our camera is moving fast, it's moving up and down, we get that last extra layer of movement and dust coming into the foreground that hopefully you can feel here as we kind of play this back one more time. And by adding all of these layers together, none of these are complicated on their own. It's all fairly simple. Like, again, we just walked through 4 layers here. It's rain, it's dust, it's glow cards inside of Unreal, and it was integrating the rain and adding some lights together. But fairly simple there. It's obviously pretty straightforward, and none of this is hard to render out. We're just isolating one thing at a time so we can combine everything together to make a really cool image. And yeah, that was the whole process on all these different shots. So it's adding in rain. In this case, we just added in an explosion, but that explosion was added in the same way inside of Nuke, and just taking that footage and plugging it into an image plane so it exists in the 3D world. And then it basically gives us the ability to combine our stock footage and place it in the 3D depth of our scene. So that's why it can start to look pretty successful. Hopefully no one can really tell that's the trick I'm doing here, because hopefully it just looks correct. But you can see that helicopter goes into the explosion if we kind of step through that clip here, and it's because we're using that depth channel. We're actually hiding it, so the front of that helicopter ends up inside of the dust, or inside of that explosion, and the tail ends up staying outside of the explosion. So that's how we want to really utilize those depth passes. It's not by doing any crazy complicated math or any complicated techniques. It's actually these really simple techniques, these simple 4 chords, one of those being image planes and using that to add stock footage into your shots. The other 2 being characters and environments and editing everything together. If you can do all of these things, then you can pretty much make any scene that you want. And then it's just a matter of, improving your skills, making each project better than the last, and pushing things further. But yeah, that's the compositing stage of this process. But the one thing that I realized on War of Being, our final problem, is that if you're not careful here, that last 20% can honestly take 80% of the time. So all of these shots, it's really, really fast to put all these together inside of Unreal. But if you're not careful, you can take even more time just finishing up the compositing. So that was a big lesson I learned on War of Being, because in this case, we need to render out hundreds of shots, not just one shot. If we're making a short film, a 10-minute short film, you're gonna have to render out shot after shot after shot. And so we need to make sure that we're not spending a lot of time where we can't afford it. So this is why I don't recommend anyone uses path tracing, because path tracing is not real time. Compositing is not real time. The real takeaway here, and this is so funny too, this is true in After Effects or Nuke, just watching your render play back for the first time. I'm just trying to load in my render and watch it for the first time. This is how slow it is to just preview each frame. Like just to watch it back for the first time. This is so incredibly slow. But if you used After Effects, if you've used Nuke, you know, oh yeah, crap, it actually takes a long time just to preview my render. And it's something that you take for granted when you're in Unreal, everything's in real time, you're able to create at the speed of thought, you're working like a filmmaker, and then we go into the compositing side of this workflow and we basically hit a brick wall. We're not able to move fast. So the final epiphany is that it's either all real time or it's not real time. And that's why it's so important to figure out a complete real-time workflow or as close to real-time as possible so you're never waiting around for renders and you're always working on your final result. This is the key here. This is what's going to save you months or years off of making a short film, is finding a fully real-time workflow where you're always working on your final result and not waiting around for those renders. So that's why with Unreal, we're able to just zip past every single step here. And that's why a huge part of my process, in order to figure out how do we do compositing even faster, that's why I put together my one-click compositing template, which applies all these lens effects, the anamorphic glow, the lens dirt, the chromatic aberration, the vignetting, all the classic lens effects that I end up using on Hollywood visual effects. That's the last step here, is to add that in, and that really is the last step there. Compositing your shots is that step that everyone skips over, and you really don't want to, because the more you can actually focus on this, you can really start to put your work ahead of everyone else, and it'll start to separate. And when you're trying to apply for jobs at a visual effects studio, the game of that is to be the one person that they select. It's not to be in the top 10. You can't have half of a job. It's either you got the job or you didn't. So when that's, you know, the high barrier to entry that we're all facing now, the reality is you need to make sure that your portfolio is the absolute best out of everyone else you're applying against. And if you're able to do that, then you're not going to have a very hard time finding a job in this industry. It's just it's very easy to say, very hard to do. But compositing is one of those steps that so few people do. Everyone kind of has these video game renders in their demo reel and in their portfolio, and if you're able to add in that last 20%, it'll make a huge difference in your quality of work and hopefully your quality of jobs. So yeah, that's the big chapters for tonight. The shortcuts to build cinematic environments faster than easier by adding glow cards, by adding in decals, and by using reference in the right way to add depth and really flesh out your full world. How to go from idea to final film using Unreal Engine 5. And lastly, that last 90%, that's going to take you all the way to finished film. So let's take a look at the entire film here one last time and look at everything put together. So yeah, the big question I have for you here is ultimately, just to kind of tie this all together for all of us, is to think, using what I kind of showed you today, if you got free characters from Mixamo, free animations, you don't have to rig anything, you now know how to storyboard out an entire sequence just using screenshots, just by moving around in a viewport, screenshotting things together, and assembling your own film for the first time, faster and easier, hopefully than you thought possible. That was my goal, at least. But if you followed through all of those steps, do you think you could at least start to create one visual effects shot out of that process? Because I hope the answer is yes. I want to try to deliver as much as I can, especially for you folks who are still getting started. Because if you can make one shot, it means that you can actually create your first action scene. And from there, you can build your first demo reel. And once you have that demo reel, that really is your ticket to start applying at these studios and maybe one day work on set in virtual production, start working on some of your favorite franchises at a video game studio or visual effects studio. It all comes from the same core skill set of just learning filmmaking in Unreal. And ultimately, to me, it's always been about giving everyone the best shot possible to land that first job. I know how hard it was. I know it can definitely be a struggle if you're on the outside looking in, but I hope this gives you some really concrete steps to actually start to land that. But hopefully you feel like you can make better visual effects in films. But I bet some of you out there are a little overwhelmed, right? Especially those of you that have just started out. So if it's cool, for those of you that are looking for a little bit of a shortcut to go from someone who doesn't know Unreal at all to actually knowing every single step and creating your own films from scratch in under a month, I have an offer here. Just put together a special bundle just for you folks on the live stream right now if you're interested. So for those of you that do want to get that leap forward, you don't want to suffer through, the 2.5 years that it took me to try to piece all of these different ideas together. You don't have to wonder about what they do at visual effects studios or on set in virtual production. I can give you all of the lessons I've learned all the techniques, all the software, all the artistic techniques that you need to know to apply this to your own work and be job ready at a visual effects studio. That's my goal. If that's cool, because the big idea is we all want to make cool films, and there's a lot of small things you have to know to get this right. But once you learn Unreal, the whole filmmaking process is super, super fun and creative. And that, to me, is why I'm sticking with Unreal. And ultimately, beyond that, I'm sure lots of you have wanted to work on set. And in my opinion, Unreal is absolutely the future of that industry. And I think most people overestimate or they probably just don't know that almost all of the skills you need to know to create films in Unreal is the same exact step-by-step workflow that you need to know to use virtual production on set. There's just a couple additional steps you need to know to use it on an LED volume, but it's not that different. It's all the same core tools inside of Unreal Engine. You don't have to be a visual effects artist like I was for the last 8 years. I really do believe that anyone can get started. And I was wondering this at the beginning, can a complete beginner really start to learn Unreal? And this is Mark Jason. So he's someone who's gone through the programs at Unreal for VFX, and he's actually a music producer. He didn't consider himself like a visual effects artist at the beginning, but he wanted to use Unreal Engine to make his own music videos and hopefully do it in a fast way where he can save money on budgets and all that stuff, but pour his energy and his passion into a passion project. So, but early on he thought he could never learn it, and so he went mostly through YouTube tutorials to learn a lot of that. And I talked to him, and he said the biggest thing was. The biggest problem is that so many YouTube videos, they're teaching you one feature. They're teaching you this one tiny aspect of Unreal Engine, and they're probably teaching you how to use it for game development, but they're not teaching you this workflow for making films. The hard part isn't learning how this one part of the software works together or finding like what buttons do I press over here. It's actually figuring out how does this whole system flow together? How do I go from idea to animation to polished final film? That's the hard part to find here, and that's why I do want to try to make all these these lessons to demystify that process, because it's not very obvious and it's hard to find anyone that's actually made anything themselves. Like most people making YouTube tutorials out there haven't actually finished their own short film in Unreal. And that's why it took me so long to learn it in the first place. And the same was true for Mark Jason. Thankfully, he went through Unreal Fundamentals. He said he never thought he'd be able to understand anything in Unreal, but now he feels like he can make a decent environment. So that leads us to the question of why do artists fail when they're learning Unreal, and how can you avoid it? And the biggest reason, I think, is because most people come in with this expectation of a really ideal learning curve. You're gonna learn a bunch really fast. You'll spend like 2 weeks. You'll put in a lot of time. You'll learn everything you need to know, and then it's gonna become easy. That's what we all want. That's what everyone has been promised. But like I heard from some of you folks at the beginning, lots of people, myself included, have tried and failed to learn Unreal. You just give up in the middle of it. And this is why. This is what the actual Unreal 5 learning curve is. And right at the bottom there, right in the middle, is the pit of despair, or the valley of despair, if we want to make it work with the graph. And the reason why, it's actually a really obvious reason for myself now that I've tried to think of what's the best way to learn this. And it's because a lot of people are taking their visual effects knowledge and their filmmaking knowledge and they're trying to plug it into Unreal. But what they don't understand is Unreal is actually a game engine first. So a lot of times people get started on their first film, they get stuck along the way, like something is broken, they can't figure out how to fix it, the forum posts don't help them, they can't find the right answer, and eventually those of us that have stuck around and figured it out is because we eventually realized, oh, okay, we had to go in and learn the game development side of things first to actually allow us to troubleshoot our problems. Now, don't worry about this because honestly, you don't need to spend a ton of time learning game dev. The real important thing here is you just have to learn it first. And you can learn 30 to 60 minutes of game dev techniques and learn everything you need to know to start like being a filmmaker in Unreal. You don't have to make your own Skyrim or release your own game on Steam. You just have to understand how the engine works in the first place. And if you can do that, then you'll get comfortable in Unreal. You'll be able to work creatively, fast. It becomes super, super fun because you're working at the speed of thought. And so why a lot of artists fail is because they're avoiding the game engine side of Unreal when it's called Unreal Engine. It is a game engine first, and we just need to lean into it too. And the way that I actually ended up learning Unreal in the first place is I caught a call. Well, it's one of those things like now that I'm kind of, have been in the visual effects industry for a decent chunk of time at this point. I had an offer come across my desk. I wasn't really reaching out for anything. And someone actually came to me about the Avatar: The Last Airbender gig. They're like, hey, do you know Unreal? Do you want to use this on set? For Avatar: The Last Airbender. I was like, dude, of course I know Unreal. I'm a master at Unreal. Like, when do we start? Meanwhile, that was actually after I had kind of given up and I didn't really know Unreal is the point there. I'd gotten my basics in, I'd made one project, but I wasn't confident. I wasn't able to express any idea I had. So once I said yes to that, I'm never the type of person to come in unprepared. So I made sure to, I literally quit my job that day, that my active contract. I was like, I need to take a month off. I'm going to go all in. When I get serious about something, I get pretty dang serious. So I was like, okay, 12-hour days, 5 practice projects. Let's write out our own curriculum. Let's figure this out. Let's read the documentation. And what was so funny is after going through that, spending basically 30 days straight, no joke, trying to learn all of this, I finally got started on set in virtual production over on Avatar: The Last Airbender. And what was so funny about that process is I actually learned more in that first week of just being shoulder to shoulder with people that had actually used it before, could just point me to the right answers because they had just done it. And it was so eye-opening, and I learned so much more in that first week just because I was able to be with someone who knew what they were doing. So that's why, to me, I've always wanted to try to find the best possible way to package that up and make sure that we could have everyone go through that of not just learning this on your own, not going through all these pitfalls, but actually guided to the final workflow so you can do this yourself and bring your own ideas to life. So the big problem with this is what I just call the skill bridge. And the problem with Unreal is if you want to cross the bridge, if you want to make a render, make a movie out of Unreal, you need to know all of these tiny little steps. You need to know modeling, blueprints, materials, animation, Niagara effects, and all this stuff is really easy to learn if I'm being honest. But it's being able to learn every single small aspect of Unreal when no one's really tying all this info together. So when you bring the game dev and visual effects concepts together, that's when you can actually accomplish and learn all of the skills in the skill bridge, and you're able to cross, because the hardest part is just learning Unreal for the first time. But once you know Unreal, you can work in real time, you can be creative, you can be a director, you can be your own visual effects supervisor, and basically you can use real-time rendering forever. You never need crazy camera equipment, you never need to pay for rentals. If you ever want to practice an idea, you can just do it yourself at home on your own schedule after work. You don't need to pay for stand-ins and pay for a location and all this crazy stuff that you have to do for a real-world production. You can just do it at home all yourself using Unreal 5. My big question for all of you is, if all you needed was just 30 minutes a day to start making your own films in Unreal, how long would you want to wait to get started? because basically what I wanted to do is reverse engineer all the hard parts of learning Unreal so that anyone could do it, even a fourth grader, and make it fun, make it simple, not make it take a lot of time. And so you can actually just create your own films, build towards your own goals, build that demo reel, and ultimately, just like I try to do in the past, actually try to make concrete steps towards building a portfolio that actually gets you hired for your dream jobs. That's always been my goal from the beginning, is to give you the absolute best shot possible and teach you all the techniques, holding nothing back on the artistic side and the technical side. So that's why I put together Unreal Fundamentals, which is just the complete roadmap to create your own films inside of Unreal, starting as a complete beginner all the way to becoming an Unreal filmmaker. So we use War of Being, which is that motion capture project I built last year, as our blueprint, as our case study, so we can see how we need to start making films in Unreal, but we'll also start building environments from scratch. We'll learn all the tools, assuming you know nothing at the beginning. You don't need to be experienced in 3D, or if you know other 3D softwares, it's going to be really easy for you to migrate over into Unreal and start building projects without leaving Unreal, build them from scratch, or figure out the entire environment pipeline, the whole character pipeline, and ultimately the whole filmmaking workflow, so it can actually become really fast, fun, and easy. So that is what we go through here. We go through 3 different environments that we walk through, from lighting to texturing to materials to everything that's important. We basically try to simplify it all down. So that is our 21-day Unreal Filmmaking Bootcamp. So you don't need to spend years to learn all of this. You can actually just create films, make daily progress. And a lot of people get stuck because they just don't feel like they're making progress each day. Like if you actually felt like you were progressing towards your goals every day, you wouldn't get bored learning Unreal. But that's the biggest problem, is you're kind of on your own. You're stuck kind of guessing what there is to do next. We'll give you the full roadmap and teach you everything you need to know to actually get what you're looking for. And thankfully, we've been able to do this with over 500 different students. I'm seeing, oh, hey, Void was in the chat earlier. He's one of our great students. I'm actually going to share some of his student work here in just a little bit. And what's so cool is people are actually able to make their own films, not just replicate these tutorials that we're teaching. So it works at every skill level, whether you're just starting out or you're advanced. And by the end, the idea is that you'll actually be able to create action scenes on your own. We'll show you the best resources for free characters, free animations. We'll bring you through the whole process of retargeting, so you can take any animation and apply it to any character you want. And we'll show you how to take those Paragon characters, bring them together and create your own action scene using all of these techniques. So you'll have a really cool final project. You'll be able to make your own action scene, your own robot battle, fight any of these characters because they're all free. They have free animations, and we'll show you how to use them and create your own film in a really fun way. But when I was making this, I did have 2 big choices. One was, okay, I can make this like 3-hour fast version. I could teach you a couple tricks, and it's kind of what I did today. I can teach you a little part of it, but I didn't think that would actually help. I think a lot of people struggle learning that whole stack of skills together. And so you have this complete workflow, this skill stack, and then you can just apply it to your own films. So I had to dig in a little bit more, make this a little bit longer, but keep it on the rails so that anyone could actually start making films at the end of this. That's our goal, right? So Unreal Fundamentals on its own usually will charge $597 just for the training here. Now, I promise you today, I want to over deliver. I want to make sure like no one here is paying $597 for anything, but I also have a ton of bonuses that are limited time. That they're not usually available on the site or anything like that are just available for you folks on here right now if you're looking to get started. So I want to share some of those with you now. And the real idea here is I just want to get rid of any roadblock in your way. I want to pull any problem that might show up and just eliminate it completely, so you can just get laser focused on achieving that final result of being a filmmaker in Unreal. So rather than you struggling through learning all these different tiny little skills, I basically made a cheat sheet and resource to make the entire process super, super easy. And it comes in the form of all these bonuses that I want to give away to you right here. So the first one is our lightning fast render preset. So instead of waiting around for all these really slow renders, what if you could just get instant renders back, the fastest render presets possible, and you don't have to guess about the fastest, best way to do this. I'll just give you the mathematically best result, the best option that I found. And these presets I update every single time I find something new. So I found a new preset when I was working on that Dune Masterclass, and so I updated it. And these are the exact presets I literally use every single day. And I'm just handing them to you. So you can use the same ones I'm using. You can get super fast results. And this has everything you'll need from down to EXRs and AOVs if that's what you're into for you advanced users out there. Otherwise, this will just give you the fastest results possible. And it'll show you how to use it. The next step is I'll give you my exact compositing template. So this is the one-click compositing template, which gives you all of the crazy lens effects that you're seeing here, which will basically just take your shots and take them from that video game look to making them look like they have all the imperfections of a real camera lens. So we'll show you how to use depth of field, we'll add grain, chromatic aberration, lens effects, diffusion, flares, all that cool stuff, all in a single template that literally it's just a couple sliders, you press one button and you get a cool result. So we've simplified the whole process. We're going to make it super easy so you can basically composite in real time. And this is available for Nuke and for After Effects. So regardless of which software you use, this template exists for both. So you can use both, although obviously Nuke is what is used at Hollywood studios. So we're basically taking all those techniques of working at a Hollywood visual effects studio and giving them to you at home so you can use them on every project in the future forever. I'm super psyched about it. This is like my favorite thing and I use it every single day. We also simplified materials. So we created a material cheat sheet so you don't have to worry about the game dev concepts here. You can create materials in a really fun and creative way. And basically we put this cheat sheet together so you can just figure out what are the most helpful nodes, what is the best, fastest way to build materials. And this basically took all of the guesswork and all the lessons I took from 2 years of messing around with materials. I put labels on everything. I made it really easy to use so you can copy and paste all these nodes into your own projects and make really complex master materials really simply. And we also have a 1-hour training that goes along with this to make it super easy to understand. The same is true with simplifying blueprints. So if you've heard of Unreal, you've probably heard about blueprints. And a lot of times this is hard to learn because you're trying to learn blueprints from people teaching game development instead of people teaching filmmaking. So we're going to teach you how to use blueprints to make artist-friendly tools. We'll show you how to make cloud cards. This is the building blocks of virtual production. We'll show you how to use blueprints to build environments faster. These are those cloud cards, so we'll help you build depth, and you can literally just drag these, copy these out of this template and use them in your own projects, but we'll also teach you how to build them yourself. Really, really simple and straightforward. It's just most of the time people are kind of explaining things in a convoluted way. So you can get these cloud cards, drag and drop them into your scene and learn how to build artist-friendly tools all on your own. And we use these to make the Dune project file look pretty sweet. That is Blueprints for Beginners. It's like a 60-page PDF. It's its own chapter. It's how to build blueprints and different tools for filmmaking and make it easier than ever. But we are missing one critical skill, and that is filmmaking. We want to make sure that you're actually able to build or make your own films. So like I said, the whole thing is based around this production case study of War of Being, and we'll actually teach you how to make your own action scenes by the end of it. So using those free assets, those free animations, will show you the entire workflow so you can do it yourself. And we've had a lot of other people who have been able to do it too. So this is our student reel. This is folks that have gone through the training, and they're not just duplicating existing tutorials. Like there's so many castle environments out there that all look the same. People are able to actually use them to tell their own stories, bring their own vision to life, and become the filmmaker that they always wanted to be, not just some copycat of another artist. So yeah, that's why I'm honestly super proud of it, is because a lot of people are able to take this, run with it, and genuinely start telling their own ideas and bring them to life. This is Oh Hey Void, who made a really cool short for the Rococo Challenge. And yeah, we've had lots of folks run through this, like Zalushi and others. So that is Unreal Fundamentals. That is the training course itself. That's it's over 96 different videos. That's the lightning fast render presets, the one-click template, the material cheat sheet, blueprint cheat sheet. We also have lesson recaps. We have a beginner's glossary. We have a bunch of stuff. Too much to get through all in this one thing. Lots of of extra bonuses just to make it super, super simple. Now that is the complete roadmap. That's everything you need to get started. Now, most people, they take all this stuff, like honestly, this is every cheat sheet I've ever created, every lesson I've learned. This is 2.5 years of struggle and pain and production experience put into one easy to use training course and material, so you can learn it once, you can learn it right, and you never have to learn it again. Most people would charge some crazy price tag for all this, for all the bonuses, for all the free models, for all the things we included in this. But like I said, I don't want anyone paying crazy, ridiculous college prices. I started as someone out here on YouTube. I dropped out of college. I don't want someone paying absurd amount for all of these resources. I want to over deliver and give you the best package possible and make it really easy to learn Unreal. But I do have a couple extra bonuses that I want to hop on to make it more interesting and just give you all the tools you really need to make films in Unreal. So I'm also going to bundle in with this the plane I used in this project file. So this is a fully rigged plane. This is the Bristol Bulldog, fully rigged, fully textured, ready to go in Unreal. And we actually have an entire bonus chapter, chapter 12, which shows you how to use this plane model to create your own dogfight and create aerial filmmaking, aerial shots from scratch. So we'll show you how to make this. This is literally what we walk through. This is the project I made at the end of chapter 12, and we'll show you how to use this, how to use this to build your own demo reel, your own portfolio piece out of this, and ultimately tell your own story using these models. We go through the theory, we go through the techniques, we go through everything you need to know, my perfect camera workflow so you can add cool camera shake and all that stuff, add crazy effects, everything you'd want. And like I said, even the interior of this is rigged. So everything in this model is completely spec'd out. You can really tell some cool, interesting stories here. You can change the speedometers, you can move everything around, you can change the character, you can move the steering wheel, all that cool stuff. It's all ready for you, and it's built for filmmakers, not for games. So we put in all the bells and whistles to make this super cool, so it's really fun and easy to use, so you can genuinely use it on your own films or your own projects. Now, obviously, we had to get someone to put this all together, create the training. Now you have a fully rigged model. We need like 2 artists, one to model and texture it, one to rig it and bring it to life. Had to get all of that ready and prepped for you. So, that's just another thing we're including for free along with everything else. But I don't want to stop there. What if you could also get the Dune Masterclass, that entire project file, completely for free? So I'm going to make that available for anyone that is interested in signing up today. You'll get the entire project file. This includes the ornithopters, the vehicles you see here, and these ornithopters are also completely rigged. So you can open this up. You'll see exactly how I built this entire environment from scratch. You can learn from this. You can create your own Dune fan films and your own project using these assets, using that ornithopter, using this environment, and go crazy with it. Build whatever you want. Just make sure you credit things appropriately. Don't take credit for making the environment if you didn't make it. But if you make a previs with all those assets, hey, that's awesome. That's what it's there for. It's for you to make films and make them look like your favorite movies. So just getting the rights to that ornithopter model, I literally had to pay. I did it 2 weeks ago. I had to pay the dude $1,000 just to get that available for everyone else, so that we could pull it offline and make it available for students only. And then obviously it took me, 24 hours total to pour into this and put everything I can into making the most, bang for buck environment possible. And you can learn from that and use it for your own films if you want to sign up today. Normally that would easily be $2,000. We put more than just that into making them available and all that stuff. But that's easily how much it would cost you. But we're not stopping there. I also want to throw in one last bonus, which is what you need to start working at a visual effects studio. Like I said, Nuke is the software that every artist needs to know to start working at a real visual effects studio. And I took a poll, and it turns out only 10% of artists know how to use Nuke, which means the other 90% of you don't have the skills to be job ready at a real visual effects studio. So if you want to change that, if you want to be job ready, Nuke is completely free for you to use and download and start practicing with on your own machine. And I want to teach you all the skills that I have in just a single day. So instead of looking on the outside as just an After Effects user, if you want to take that next step in working at a real studio, this is what's used on Avengers, on every single major production. They all use Nuke. They don't use After Effects. So we'll teach you how to use Nuke as a complete beginner. I'll teach you the best lessons I've learned over 10 years of using Nuke for visual effects through freelance work and at studios, and we'll show you how to take your shots to the next level. We also break down the whole green screen workflow, so how you can go from taking green screen footage and recreating that background in Unreal. This is a huge opportunity, like for those of you that want to make music videos, who want to do your own freelance work, want to be your own boss. This is a great way for you to be a one-man band or a group of 3 or 4 of you, where one person's the director, or you could split it out any way you want. But a lot of people do this as a technique to add band performances and create really cool backgrounds in Unreal. We'll teach you that entire workflow, how to recreate that camera inside of Nuke, import it into Unreal, and basically round trip it back so you can work the fastest way possible and learn everything you need to know to do green screen key. Sorry, my words are messing up. I'm talking too much. But you'll learn all the skills to do green screen keying using the exact workflows that I use at a real visual effects studio. So if you've ever wondered how do they get those perfect keys from green screen footage, how do they take their renders to the next level, that's what you're going to learn in the Unreal to Nuke Masterclass. So this is the secrets to create cinematic renders every single time. This is its own training course. Typically, I'll just have it as its own thing on the side. Howard Gersh went through this. He's literally a senior artist who is over at ILM. He said he used Nuke in production, but his shots would have truly benefited from all the cool nuggets he learned in this class. So that was really cool for me to hear that, like, hey, I can teach some VFX veterans some really cool tricks and some new ways to use Nuke, while also making sure that beginners can learn it too, because Jean Denis was someone who came in knowing nothing about compositing, just the basics of Unreal, but this was packed with insights, and he was able to learn everything he needed to actually start using Nuke on his own projects. So yeah, all of the coolest insights I've learned, all packed together in one single day. This has project files, it has renders, it's over 7 hours of training, it has all the templates, and we show you how to use them. And again, most people have to get this as its own separate project. But again, if you want to sign up today, you can get this along with Unreal Fundamentals as a free bonus if you want to join tonight. And then lastly, we're also going to give you access to our private Discord. And this is private for a reason, is we don't just have some public Discord that anyone can go to. This is a private community for people who are fairly serious about Unreal. They're trying to take their skills to the next level. And this is a place where you can get creative feedback, you can get technical feedback. You can ask the community. Every Wednesday, I'm in the chat so we can go and share our work in progress renders, and anyone can get feedback. So if you want feedback from me, that's the best place to do it, is in the Discord itself, and we'll give you access there. You can also partner up with people so you can make short films with other folks who are just as passionate as you, and it's a really cool place. Been fairly active in the last couple weeks. It's really cool to see everyone kind of sharing their work, making films, showing what they're doing, and we're all getting better together. It's the coolest part of the process. So that is everything we're looking at today. And like I said, do not worry, we're not gonna charge some crazy college prices, but this is all the stuff I wanna pack into one cool offer, just so it's really simple and easy for you to jump in with everything you need to get started, holding nothing back, so you could just get started learning Unreal Engine today, so that 3 weeks from now, you can actually start building that portfolio and working towards that dream job. So this is not going to cost some crazy $5,000 amount. No way. That's totally not what we're about. It's not going to cost you $19.97, which is probably a realistic price for what it would actually cost people to go through this. It's not even going to cost $9.97. You'll get everything we're talking about today: Unreal Fundamentals, the Unreal to Nuke Masterclass, the Dune project files, the Unreal Film School, which is the Chapter 12 and the new plane model. Everything you're seeing here for just $4.97, and we got 50 seats available that are open until Sunday for any of you folks that are interested. So we also have a 30-day money-back guarantee, because we just want it to be a really easy choice. It'd be a bummer if you stayed this long and you're ready to kind of make that next step with Unreal and just get that shortcut and get the skill set you're looking for. So you can go to unrealforvfx.com/go. That's the link. It's just a link for you folks. It'll be taken down on Sunday night, basically, Sunday night at midnight. But if you're interested, that's going to be the spot to do it. And then I'll just post this link in the chat here so you folks have it. And I would also love to answer any questions from the group. If anyone has anything that they're wondering, would love to take that further. Let me just paste in this link for you folks, and then it's easy to just hop over there. So there we go. That's unrealforvfx.com/go. That's available there. So go check that out. That's going to be the best link for that. And let's jump back over here. And yeah, just so, and the real goal here is that we just want to make it so that you can actually genuinely start practicing and becoming a better filmmaker as soon as possible. Because with Unreal, you don't need camera gear to start practicing these big budget film ideas. You don't need to get actors together. You don't need to get lenses and cameras and rental gear and pay for 10 people's lunch just to get people together. And they kind of deserve it because they took time out of their Sunday to come make your film. But now you don't really need anyone to start practicing and making your own film. And to me, the best way to do this and get better at making films is to do it at home and then take this out into the real world when you're making your own films, or like I'm doing with the Godzilla project, pour it into one big project and make your own films, be your own boss, get your own freelance clients yourself. That's really what we're trying to do here is just make it easy to build your own at-home visual effects studio, which is exactly what I'm trying to do with Unreal. It also just totally gets rid of rendering, so you never have to worry about render times ever again with Maya, with Blender, with all these different things. And we also make it really, really easy. We have daily emails that we'll send right to you with recaps of everything you might have missed, so that in just 21 days, you're actually able to get a result. And again, you only need to spend 30 to 60 minutes a day watching and practicing, and then we'll make sure you don't get stuck behind. We'll give you all the resources you need to get started. And that's the best way to do that. And we also have the Unreal Filmmakers Glossary. So we do have two ways for any of you folks to get started. Obviously, you can get started for $4.97, or anyone can also get started for just $99 starting today. And both of these are backed by that 30-day guarantee. So you get to go in there, you get to try it out, you get to see if it's a good fit for you. The last thing I would want is for someone who's like super motivated, who knows this, they want to learn Unreal, they want to get this skill set, but money's an issue or whatever it might be. So to me, I just want to make it easy and accessible to absolutely everyone. So if that's a better option that works for you, you can get started for just $99, and it's just one additional payment. So there we go. And then we have 30 days for you to decide if that's right for you. So that's unrealforvfx.com/go. And yeah, if you want to join, that's going to be a great spot to check that out. I'll shout out anyone up if you're looking to join. I'll make sure I shout out anyone else that joins on the chat here. And yeah, a couple questions I usually get from everyone is, will this work for you? Obviously, everyone can see all the cool work that comes out of Unreal. But yeah, I think to me, what makes me most excited about the training is that people have actually been able to tell their own stories, use their own characters, use their own models, actually tell their own stories. And all of this work that you're seeing here bears no resemblance to what we teach directly in the course, because we're actually teaching the skills to make films instead of just how to replicate things. Louis Cha was someone who joined just a few weeks ago. He was someone who was a complete beginner starting out, and he was able to get up and running in just 3 weeks. We also had Jonas Singh, who's actually a YouTuber, goes by the name of Zalushi. He has a really cool VR channel, and he's been using Unreal to actually create his own cutscenes for his YouTube videos. So go check out his stuff now if you're interested. But yeah, he said he started out knowing nothing about Unreal Engine, and he gained all the skills to build scenes and render cinematics completely from scratch. So he was not a tech guy, just someone super passionate about video games and filmmaking. And from there, he was able to build this film. So this is his work. This is literally from Zalushi. And he was able to make his own Star Wars film and make a couple extra cutscenes to make this video come to life, which was really cool. Added in animated characters, first person point of view, adding in animations. And this was just his first project. Now he's adding himself in as a metahuman, as a character in his own films, and taking them further and further, and also stepping up his own shots with compositing and all that cool stuff. So yeah, Jonas does some really great work. Felipe Fenner, he says now he can work faster and more focused as a director and 3D artist. And Jay Lee, he did some really great work. He did those Blade Runner shots, and yeah, he was saying that he'd recommend this. Yeah, he dug the course. This was some of the shots that he came out of the training with, and basically how he approached it was he followed along with the videos, and then on the side he was building this and upgrading it with each chapter. So he was able to apply all of those lessons into a new project and was able to take his shots further, which is pretty sweet. So yeah, it's at your own pace. It's 30 to 60 minutes a day. And you can, this is what our entire goal is, to give you the tools to build Hollywood level visual effects in films. That's what I've always started off wanting to do. I started off in filmmaking because I wanted to make my own shots look as good as my favorite Hollywood movies. And that's what we're all here. That's what we're all passionate about. That's what we're all trying to do. Lastly here, I think we got Tom Davis, who's a character animator over at Sony ImageWorks. So not just folks who are complete beginners, but also folks at studios. And yeah, said it was easy to understand compared to other courses. And obviously, I'm super grateful at this point. We've had lots of people go through the training. We've been able to update it constantly. You'll get lifetime access, which means all the updates we have, you'll get access to everything. And we do update this every 1 to 2 months. We've pretty much done that without fail because Unreal changes. We also learn a lot of stuff as we're making our own projects, and we want to make sure you get the most up-to-date info as we're going. So that is Unreal Fundamentals over at unrealforvfx.com/go if you're interested, and that's with the lightning fast render presets, the compositing template, the material cheat sheet, the blueprints for beginners cheat sheet, and then we have those lesson recaps, the Unreal Filmmakers Glossary, our beginners hotkeys. We get everything you're seeing here, including the bonus plane and our bonus chapter 12, where you'll create your own dogfight completely from scratch. You'll get the Dune project file, and even after that, you'll get the Unreal to Nuke Masterclass completely for free as a bonus if you want to join today. So you can get started for $497, or it turns into 6 payments of $99. Either way, you can get started and make that final decision. You got 30 days to try it out and see if it's right for you. I'm also seeing Eddie that you joined up. Super cool to see you in there. I'll see you in the Discord. That's super awesome, man. And yeah, I'll take a look back at the chat. Definitely want to answer any of your questions and see what we got. Some people too, I just know a lot of people are Mac users, and they always ask me like, hey, does this work for Mac? And the answer is absolutely yes. Now is the best time for Mac users to jump in. Unreal is finally supported in a big way with Unreal. And with each new version of Unreal, they're adding more and more support. So yeah, it's a great time to jump in, hit the ground running. And we have a separate project file just for Mac users to get started with. So we have a Mac specific version for all you Mac users out there too. But cool. And yeah, the offer stands until Sunday. Seeing that from Noble Gladiator. So yeah, you have until Sunday night, or until we got 50 folks who have joined in. Usually it ends up being, sometimes we've ended it around like Sunday afternoon or something like that. We'll send out emails so you know for sure. We'll end up putting the live counter on the site. But yeah, unrealforvfx.com/go. Otherwise, just click the link that's pinned at the top of the comment section here. And let's answer a couple questions from you folks. And let's jump in here. So cool. Is this a self-paced course or everyday instructor? So yeah, this is self-paced. We basically lay out the entire roadmap, every single lesson that you'll need along the way, and then you're able to do it whenever you have time. So some people, they like to do a little bit each day. I think that's the best way to approach it. Some people also, they do one lesson at a time, or they do a bunch all on Saturday and Sunday. I think any of these options work. But yeah, just to show you behind the curtains and just so you can see exactly what it is that we have here. Super easy to use, and once you sign up, you'll see this right away. You'll get Unreal Fundamentals and the Unreal to Nuke Masterclass. We just jump in right here, and then you get full access. Like you can see here, tons of videos, and we're adding new ones all the time. We build basically 3 different environments from scratch, and we learn every single option that we need to know along the way, all the way down to filmmaking and vehicles. So if we hop all the way down to chapter 12, you can see that we're creating our own plane battle, and that we show you how to use that plane. What are the techniques that go into creating this? Some great ways to put references. My perfect camera workflow, how we can recreate the shots from Dunkirk and make them look photoreal. And then we have all of our bonuses here at the bottom. So we have our Dune project file, we have our one-click template, we have our lightning fast presets. We got everything here, and you can see, we update those pretty regularly. And then lastly, we also have an AI search engine. So this is something I always wanted to add and always wanted to build, is just having an Unreal search engine, because the documentation is so hard to look through. A lot of people complain that it's just more confusing, especially because it's kind of a resource built by game developers for game developers instead of something by a filmmaker for filmmakers. How you might use this is, I remember there was some chapter about volumetric fog. So let's just type in volumetric fog. And very quickly, we can see that everything, we'll actually get the captions of the video popping up here, showing us how what time codes we can jump to based on the lessons we're looking for. So here I can jump to this time code where I'm talking about volumetric fog and adjusting that density. And the same is true for something like enabling path tracing. So path tracing is something that we do cover briefly in here. And if you want to change your path tracing, we can see here, we'll go down to our path tracer video, and we can see to enable path tracing in your project settings, you just have to enable these features. So I'll click on this little caption here, and literally that video will jump right to the time code where you can see all the answers you're looking for. So, to enable path tracing, here's all of the options we need to pick. So we built it in a way where it's really easy to search, it's really easy to find answers, and you can actually use it as a resource instead of just, some video training that's hard to look through and there's 90 videos and it's really tough to understand. We give you that order in the right order, so it's easy to learn the first time, and then it's really easy to search through all the results later on. So you can follow at your own pace, you can go back to it months later, and you can find those correct answers. So you don't have to memorize everything in your head. You can just apply what you need to your own project and then use it as a resource later on as you're making films. So cool. And yes, it is lifetime access. You'll get lifetime access to everything you're seeing here. I'm seeing that as a question from Solar. So you get lifetime updates, everything inside, all the videos, all the project files, all the cheat sheets, all the trainings, everything you're seeing there. Seeing that Solar. And then once you buy and get access, do you lose access at a certain point? So no, you do not lose access. If you complete all of the payments, then you get complete access, you get lifetime access forever. And if you pay in full, you get instant lifetime access. You get access to everything, including the Unreal to Nuke Masterclass as its own separate bonus course with bonus project files and all that cool stuff. We don't have a separate payment. We don't have a lower payment plan. So it's either $497 or the payment plan of $99. If anyone else has last questions, the comments go by pretty quick and it's hard for me to tell when they were put. So if you have any questions that I didn't get to, just repost it below. I'll get to those now. Otherwise, I do appreciate every single one of you coming out and hanging out with me tonight. It's been a super fun day. I hope you learned some stuff on the filmmaking side. And we can actually start making bigger and better films in Unreal together. It's obviously the thing I'm most passionate about. And would love for any of you folks to join in. I'm seeing Eddie and CJ. Welcome aboard. We'll see you inside of the Discord. It's gonna be super cool to have you on board and see what you make by the end of the training. Gonna be super cool. If anyone else has some last questions, hey Void, thanks for that. Great to see you, man. Cool. Is the Discord link made available with the purchase from Noble Gladiator? Yeah, so as soon as you download it, you'll get, I think right away, you'll get access to that Discord link. So it's the first thing you'll see. Otherwise, that link is in the training. It's just in the first video. We put it in a couple of different areas, so you got all the access to it. So it's really easy to see. Just so those of you can see it, I'm just going to flash it on the screen here too. We have until Sunday night at unrealforvfx.com/go And then that is going to be the best spot, the lowest price, and our best bundle yet. I think we're going to stop running this. We'll stop running this after Sunday night. So if you want to get everything you're seeing here, that Dune project file is not going to be available whatsoever after this week. So that is going to be the last possible place to get this all together, everything you're seeing here, for $4.97, or you can get started for just $99 and get started today. If they are serious. All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you all for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. Thanks for checking out the channel. Subscribe if you haven't. Would love to see you. We got some really cool videos coming up. We got a couple that are pretty much finished, and we're just we're building up the backlog so we can be a bit more consistent for you. But yeah, super excited. Lots of new stuff to come. Gonna share even more from this project. I think we got like 6 shots left in this Godzilla film that we'll be continuing to break down and show you everything that's a part of the making of. So really appreciate it, David. Really cool to see you. Manigandan, welcome aboard. And Noble Gladiator, yes, and it lasts until Sunday. So yeah, thanks for checking it out. I'll send you some reminder emails for those of you folks that are interested and just want that quick shortcut, so we can all kind of be making films at the same level in just 3 weeks here. But otherwise, keep checking out the videos. Unreal 5.4 is coming out, so lots of new stuff on the horizon with that as well. So yeah, super excited, and we will catch you next time. Thanks so much, and see you in the next video or in the next live stream. Peace, y'all.